Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba of LumumbaSpeaks.com. Back once again with a great show in conjunction with, of course, Bequaline Network, the Pan African social media extraordinaire. As we all know, the home of African Centered News and Information. Happy Pan African Sunday to everyone, as Brother Sandman would say. Hopefully, he would tap in and be part of today's conversation. Once again, before we get started, family, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you hit the notification bell as well. Like, subscribe, share. Make sure you're a blessing to the show via, of course, Cash App, Venmo, and the Super Chat. So definitely tap in, family. Have a great conversation that I think we're going to have today. Also, the link is in the description. As you all know, I'll put the link in the chat momentarily. Also, wrote an article on this particular subject matter. And of course, you could go on to Medium, check that out. So make sure you follow me on Medium. As many of you all are aware, if you've looked at the description, the link to the article is in the description as well. So definitely want to see how everyone's doing. So put a one in the chat, family, if you are familiar with what's going on in South Africa right now. Put a two in the chat if you are unfamiliar. So once again, put a one in the chat if you're familiar with what's been going on in South Africa. And then put a two in the chat if you are unfamiliar. Just want to make sure that everyone's abreast of the issue at hand in relation to our brothers and sisters in South Africa. Then, of course, we'll do a deeper dive once we get some comments in the chat. So definitely want to make sure everyone's accustomed and squared away, ready to go. But today's show, South Africa, xenophobia, and resource deprivation, why we must learn, why we must turn to each other and not on each other. So definitely want some people to tap in and be part of the conversation. As I stated before, the link is in the description. The link is also in the chat. Definitely want you all to tap in and be part of the convo. And we definitely want to make sure that we have a not only intellectually provocative, historically insightful show, but also one that's solution based, right? So when we do these shows, no, it's not simply because we want to get a name out there, but we want to make sure that this is a Pan-African platform. We've always reiterated that. And so that when we have brothers and sisters, hopefully on the continent, in the UK, wherever they are, watching our content, they're able to take something from the show and possibly utilize that on boots on the ground method. And many of you may be aware, maybe about over a year ago, we did a show regarding what was going on in South in relation to Trump making cuts to foreign aid, and of course that have the adverse effect that would have on our brothers and sisters in South Africa. Many of you may be unaware, but aid made up 17% of the annual budget in South Africa. So many of you may be unaware, they made up 17% of the budget. And so then we talked about what are some ways that our brothers and sisters in South Africa, particularly the government, could find some workarounds. And one we talked about, of course, leaning on neighboring states if that was possible, maybe turning to the AU, which many people argue is a toothless bulldog. That may not have been a solution, but maybe even looking for help from other, of course, nations, right? So just want to make sure that when we're having these conversations, we are solution-based, solution-oriented. Once again, family, if you are familiar with what's been going on in South Africa, put a one in the chat. If you are unfamiliar, put a two in the chat. You're here, of course, on a Pan-African Sunday with, of course, Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. And this, of course, is in conjunction with Bequaline Network, of course, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African-centered news and information. We also want to point out that we also are aware of the fact that we sit from a place of privilege, right? We know when you're living in the West, there are in almost innumerable issues that one faces, right? Particularly in relation to the omnipresent and ubiquitous nature of anti-Black racism. But we do understand that we live in a developed nation. We use the term developed with air quotes. And as a result, that brings us a particular set of privileges, particular set of level of industrialization that we become accustomed to, but then and also access to resources that many individuals who are, if they are in developing nations, may not have access to, not only resources but also information and education. So something to consider there as well when we have this conversation, because I think we also have to have this conversation with that, there's a level of grace and compassion, right? I think we have the benefit, at least I had the benefit, not only from being from a place of privilege and even, of course, being privileged educationally to where I'm able to view many of the issues that people face from a bird's eye view, right, rather than from a ground floor view or for underground view. So having that privilege, and I'm not looking to promote the concept of the ivory tower. Well, we could tap in. We could talk about Ghana as well. So absolutely, that's not a problem. We could talk about xenophobia in Ghana as well. Definitely, we could tap in and be part of that conversation. So I'm not going to take umbrage with that. In fact, I'm going to put the link in the chat. As you know, the link is in the description. The link is in the chat. And family, if you want to chime in, you want to be part of the conversation, you do not have to cam up, right? So we just have a basic set of rules. One, facts, not feelings, right? We want you to make sure that if you make a claim and someone disagrees, you attack the argument, not the person, right? Two, we believe in diversity of thought, right? So it was irrespective if you're on the left, you're on the right, or you're right down the middle. We believe in diversity of thought. This is how you learn and grow, not only as a scholar, as an intellectual, as a person, right? This is how you grow. Also, no racial epithets. This is a space of Black empowerment. We believe in the 3 N's of Black power: self-determination, self-defense, and of course, self-respect. And then, of course, last but not least, you just can't make any claims that are patently false or adverse to facts. If so, I have to tap in and, of course, correct you there, because it's my platform. I'm a scholar, and I am responsible for the information that is disseminated on my channel. But through Dondo 13, the link's in the description. Mr. Sandman, I say you put a 2 up there. So, and we can open this conversation up to not only xenophobia on the continent, we can even talk about it in the diaspora. We've discussed ADOS and FBA before on this platform, but I definitely want to give space for Ludondo 13 to tap in, be part of the conversation. Once again, you do not have to cam up. You can keep your camera off, and you can use a pseudonym because many people want to protect their identities, and I completely understand that. Being to be part of the conversation, right? But definitely we could talk about what's going on in Ghana, because I was familiar with what took place in Ghana. This is about last year. And of course, there were some issues. I had some exchanges with a sister. And I said, listen, this type of rhetoric is unacceptable. And oftentimes what we tend to find, unfortunately, is if you are in community with people on the continent, these issues are taking place. They don't have the benefit, I'll argue, of maybe a critical education, right, or of an education that, of course, is anti-colonial, anti-neo-colonial, that we tend to find brothers and sisters tapping into and really parroting the colonizers' language, right? I know Brother Dwayne, of course, he's historically been the, of course, resident historian here at Lumumba Speaks and Equal Network. But we find situations where people are complaining, talking about who speaks the best English, right? Colonizer language, or arguing that individuals in South Africa are simply lazy. My retort was, well, that's the same thing that the British said about, of course, Black folk in Ghana or Nigeria. So we'd have to, or Black people in the West, Africans in the diaspora, right? And we're lazy because we don't want to work for free or for pennies on the dollar, right? So we have to really be aware of the fact that, these type of negative stereotypes about Black people, oftentimes we internalize them and then disseminate them to individuals that we're othering based on us having identities that are rooted through, of course, the Berlin Conference. So something to consider there, family. Definitely want you all to tap in, be part of the conversation. If you're watching on Twitter, you can tap in, come on over, and of course, watch on YouTube at Lumumba Speaks, Be Quiet Network, or of course, Ghanaian Queen, Queen Ghanaian Beauty. But definitely want to have this conversation. I wrote an article on Medium, and so I'll put it up right now. Then maybe we could go over it together, and then we could really get the conversation started regarding. Of course, the most important thing for me is being solution oriented regarding, of course, the issue that's taking place in South Africa. We're seeing individuals, almost engaging in behavior I argue is analogous to what we're finding here in the States, with, of course, them folks and their hostile treatment of individuals that they believe are here illegally, right? And so, and I've always made the argument, particularly historically, that this really is rooted in Mr. K. Appreciate you, brother. Definitely appreciate you tapping in. hopefully you can be part of the conversation. I know you typically don't chime in live, but once again, you do not have to cam up, but definitely would love, because you're a resident historian here at Lumumba Speaks and Bitcoin Network as well. Would love for you to tap in as well. You don't have to cam up and be part of the conversation. So definitely looking forward to you doing that. The link's in the description. The link is in the chat. But one of the issues that we tend to find, a lot of this is just rooted over the battle for resources, right? So I give an example. Sister Carrie, how you doing, sister? Hey, we still got to do that show together. Make sure you send me an email. But definitely appreciate you tapping in as well. But I will always give an example to my students. We talk about oftentimes what would take place is whenever individuals feel that their positions of power, prestige, or access to resources are threatened, they tend to find ways to other different groups, particularly in ways that can be psychologically harmful. Not only psychologically harmful, but also politically, socially, economically harmful, particularly socially in terms of dangerous, right? You're othering individuals, you're saying that they're somehow, their presence somehow is problematic and prevents the forward progression of society. And so one of the examples I would give, now I'm gonna read your question in a moment, Mr. K, is we talk about the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. I think it was 1848. It ended the Mexican-American War. Somebody don't quote me on the date, but please, somebody could look it up. But we know mid-19th century. And part of the treaty stated that Mexicans and their descendants could cross the Rio Grande as basically they see fit with in perpetuity. Part of that was based on the fact that all of this area typically that we find in the western United States was at one point Mexico. Of course, we know they didn't keep their the United States government didn't actually honor the treaty. They typically don't honor anything, right? We live in a world in which power, might is right. But so what ended up taking place was when Mexicans began to cross the Rio Grande, coming to Texas, which we know at one point was part of Mexico. They then stated, okay, they're actually competing with us for jobs. This is an issue. So they criminalized behavior that was associated with being Mexican at the time. Smoking marijuana was associated with being Mexican, or what some people call Latino or Latinx. And so they outlawed, of course, smoking the marijuana, right? Rather than saying just, oh, being Mexican it makes you problematic or illegal. The other thing is that, and this is just particularly general to a labor issue. Oftentimes, here in Southwest Ohio, there are some steel mills. AK Steel in Middletown. There's some other steel companies as well in Ohio. Typically, if the workers go on strike, the company will bring in what are called scabs to keep production up, even though it won't be at, of course, the level it is when the actual normal workers are there. And so my brother at one point was working as a scab, as they call it. This is, of course, a derogatory term. And what ended up taking place is they would tell them, don't cash your check. When you get paid, just get on the highway and leave town, because if not, you could maybe be subject to violence. So just want to say, this isn't just something we find in developing nations. We find this in developed, quote unquote, developed nations as well, when it comes to issues of labor and access to resources, access to jobs. So just want to make that clear. Mr. K, curious question, do you think there's a hidden hand of external forces stirring the pot and instigating the xenophobia in South Africa? That's a great question. We would get to that. Unfortunately, Africa can't unite because even the current nations are not united tribally, but we will use the term ethnically here on Lumumba Speaks and Bitcoin Network. Unresolved issue of old or still lingering in our respective ethnic nations on the continent. Right. I definitely can agree with you there. No, that is a great question. I can't say if there's a hidden hand. What I will say is this issue is a remnant of course, apartheid, right? Where whites were able to hoard resources, hoard capital, hoard positions of power, prestige, and privilege. And then, of course, the non-whites are now othered, social, politically, economically, and they have to fight amongst themselves for what? Scraps from the colonizer's table. Right. And so what tends to happen, and I mentioned this in my article. Let me bring this up very quickly, family. Let me bring this up. Let me share my screen. But that's a great question. And S77A, I would ask you the question, how do we address that issue? And I think that's a great point, because one of the things that we find typically here in the diaspora, kind of our socialization, we have more of a Pan-Africanist, Black diasporic or African diasporic identity, your worldview. While on the continent, it tends to be extremely what ethnically based or nationally based, right? So that's something to consider. Um, so something we definitely have to look at, and I'm open to people sharing their thoughts on how we can address that issue because we know that it does inhibit progress and, of course, unity. So let's see here. Yes. So we wrote this article on Medium, South Africa, Black Xenophobia and Resource Deprivation, why we must turn to each other, not on each other, right? So I argue here recent events in South Africa have led me to write this article to address the current political turmoil in a land known as the Rainbow Nation, right? This is part of the marketing of South Africa post-apartheid as a rainbow nation as opposed to a white politically dominated economically dominated nation. For those who are unaware, South Africa under apartheid was a racially restrictive country that policed every aspect of life for South Africans who were Black, Indian, and colored. There were repressive restrictions on where non-white others could live, attend school, work, and travel. Laws enforcing segregation and partaking in politics was criminalized. This racialized system of oppression ended in 1994, culminating with Nelson Mandela's election as the first president of South Africa and the ANC becoming the ruling party of the country. However, Black South Africans have not enjoyed the economic fruits of political emancipation. For example, by one measure, the World Bank has ranked South Africa as the most unequal country in the world. According to the World Bank, 10% of the population holds 71% of the country's wealth, while the bottom 60% holds just 7% of assets. Moreover, the wealth disparities created under the settler colonial regime of apartheid remain, cloistering the majority of Black South Africans in some of the most deplorable living conditions in the global South. However, the Black middle class, though small, has expanded, and Blacks have made inroads in the mining industry that was once restricted by apartheid. Nevertheless, contemporary events, abuse of Black African migrant workers have shed light on Black xenophobia in South Africa. The issue of xenophobia in South Africa is primarily rooted in the resource deprivation suffered by Blacks in South Africa. This deprivation unfortunately contributes to xenophobic microaggressions and violence against itinerant Black African migrant workers who are politically, socially vulnerable, lack the social class and political protections of rights, and scapegoated as the cause of social problems. We find this, of course, here in the good old US of A as well. They believe are threatening their access to scarce resources due to the hoarding of capital by white South Africans, aka Afrikaners. This issue is prevalent throughout the global South, where formerly colonized peoples fight amongst themselves for resources rather than against the social actors, neo-colonizers, and neo-colonial puppets responsible for their social, political, and economic quagmire. This phenomenon known as punching down rather than punching up, we're referring to attacking the socially vulnerable, serves to insulate contemporary neo-colonizers from neo-colonial puppets from the iconoclastic wrath of their neo-colonial subjects, while providing Black South Africans a false sense of superiority that serves as a replacement to their social economic roles. We African people must learn to turn toward each other, not on each other in times of need. To do so, we can rely on a practice of agency, self-determination, and adaptive vitality, drawing on the African concepts of susu and ujamaa, as well as the African-American practice of rent parties to provide an immediate respite to the social economic pressures we face as a people. If not, we continue to suffer by defining ourselves through the arbitrary national identities imposed by the Berlin Conference. We must consider that the system of anti-Blackness makes no distinction in regard to nationality, ethnicity, creed, or clan. We must heed the influence of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who warned against the folly of dogmatic nationalism, stating, if we are nationalistic in our outlook, we will be played against each other like pawns on a chessboard. So once again, family, if you want to check that out for yourself, you could go on to, of course, medium.com. I could put the link in the chat and, of course, review the article for yourself. So let's see here. Curious question, do you think there's a hidden hand, right? I asked that question because if you read the book White Malice by Susan Williams in the Dirty Work 2, The CIA in Africa, they detail how the CIA have hidden hand front operations to instigate conflict. Yes, I am aware that the CIA does that globally, but I didn't want to make a claim, particularly regarding South Africa, if I couldn't cite a source, right? So typically, I bring that up when I'm citing issues here in the Western diaspora in terms of Haiti. We talk about Grenada. We talk about Cuba, right? Guatemala, etc. Because I can actually, name, the actual issue. But I couldn't do that in South Africa, so I didn't want to make a claim that I couldn't substantiate. To say Africa cannot unite is problematic because it's self-defeatist and fatalistic. I would agree. I would agree. Absolutely. The main issue is that illegal immigrants have become a useful tool against our white monopoly capital struggle because they are willing to be exploited by whites. As a result, we're lazy in their eyes. So definitely, so yeah, I need you to tap in so we can really break that down. You say illegal immigrants. So I take it you're referring to Black migrant workers have become a useful tool against our white monopoly capital struggle because they are willing to be exploited, right? Typically, yes, immigrant or migrant workers typically are willing to work for less than, of course, people who are from that country or the area. A good example here would be in the United States, where we find individuals from Central America. They're coming and they're working jobs, to be quite honest with you, that most people who are born and raised in America aren't willing to work and for less pay, right? So you're absolutely there. As a result, we're lazy in their eyes. Yes, because when you are saying, no, I want to work for a fair wage, and they're willing to work for what one would consider peanuts on a dollar, it would lead to one taking such a position. So definitely understand where you're coming from there. So quick question to SS778. Are you South African? Definitely tap in and be part of the convo. But so that's the question. Are you South African? You could put a 1 in the chat, or 2, or you could simply answer yes or no. So once again, family, the link is in the chat. The link is in the description. Tap in, be part of the conversation, and we really can open this up. A question I would have is, so how do we address this issue? How do we, because we know this is oftentimes migrant workers are migrating, right? Hence the term migrant, because of the lack of opportunity in their home country or region. How do we address this issue on a continental level? Because we find this going on globally, right? So that's the question I have. I don't claim to have all the answers. And so I'm putting this out here. I'm asking this question in good faith and hoping that I can get an answer that will be beneficial to our brothers and sisters who are on the front lines in South Africa, Ghana, and throughout the continent, right? But once again, I would agree they struggle. The root of the issue is these white capital these companies. Absolutely. If we force this unity, it won't mean we'll be united. It's a good dream, but we're not ready. Understood. How do we get ready? That is a question that I have. How do we get ready? How do we foment, or how do we put the mechanisms in play to help us as people become united, right? On a global front, or at least maybe just on the continent, right? And this is a major issue because we do know that for many people, what comes first is, hey, I want to be able to work so that I can eat, so that I can have a roof over my head, right? And so I put up I made some suggestions on my article in terms of Susu, Ujamaa. We knew, in the Black community, African American community, as a result of the low wages we face, as a result of doing the Great Migration, living in the urban North, we engaged in renting parties. We would actually come together. Hey, we're gonna fry some food. We're gonna put some food on the skillet, and we would throw rent parties. A good example of that is in the music video "Shackles" by Mary Mary. Came out a long time ago when I was in high school, about 25, 26 years ago. But in that music video, what took place was the young lady was struggling financially, and there was actually a written, I think even in the video, there was an eviction notice on her door. And so what happened was the community came together and they threw a rent party, and as a result, she had enough money to pay her rent, and she wasn't evicted. So we're talking about really agency here. So my concern would be, is there agency? Another question would be, are there unions in South Africa? How strong are the unions, right? We think of the work of A. Philip Randolph, Asa Philip Randolph, and E.D. Nixon, right? And the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters and Maids, the first Black union, right? And how important unionism is for Black people, for our people, right? So those are questions that I would ask. Of course, hopefully, brother SS778, when I'm presuming that you are a brother, if you're a sister, please forgive me. Are there strong unions in South Africa that advocate on behalf of the worker. We know here in the United States, this is a particular major issue. We know that, of course, white capitalists tend to hire illegal immigrants, right? Because they could pay them under the table and pay them far less than it's someone who is an actual documented worker or legal citizen. So we find this issue globally. And so this is a great question, right? Let's see here. Great source of the CIA activity in Africa is Covert Magazine. They wrote the book Dirty Work 2, the CIA in Africa Action. Covert Action publishes acknowledged by independent investigative journalists. Right. Very good. Very good. So definitely tap in, family. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. If you're watching on Twitter, you can tap in here on YouTube at Lumumba Speaks of Equaline Network and be part of the conversation. But the link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Want to hear from you all. What are some solutions? Melanated Haitian millennial. Appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you tapping in. Definitely want to hear from you all regarding this conversation. Of course, we're looking to be solution oriented, as we all know. Just go over the core tenets here at Lumumba Speaks and Equaline Network. Once again, diversity of thought is welcome. So diversity of thought is welcome. Doesn't matter if you're on the left, you're on the right, or if you're right down the middle, you could be part of the conversation. If you want to be part of the convo, you do not have to cam up, and you can use a pseudonym. So you can hide your identity. We have no that we understand. We tend to discuss a number of politically charged subjects. And so as a result, we know that it's of the utmost importance that we do what we can in the way that we can to make sure that we protect people's identity, because we don't want people losing their jobs just for being on a platform, giving their opinion. Most importantly, we don't provide racial epithets or epithets of any kind. This is a space of Black empowerment. We believe in 3 N's of Black power: self-respect, self-defense, and of course, self-determination. We want to respect ourselves as African people, as Black people, so we don't allow that. Then, of course, last but not least, we do not allow anyone to make a claim that is adverse to facts. So with that being said, once again, tap in, family, and be part of the conversation. The link's in the description. I will put the link in the chat once again momentarily. So yes, I am South African. I am not xenophobic, primarily because I know my history. Thus, we are too related to them. It's more of a cry as we are losing Africa because our migrant cousins don't fight, but I take you say flee. I'm trying to figure that out here. So Africa can't unite, but Europe can. Great point. Sister Shy, appreciate you, sister. Hopefully you could tap in and be part of the conversation. Happy to see that you're back once again. You know, we always need sisters in the struggle being part of the combo. But I never said anything about forcing unity, especially as no one ever said it, that literally every Black person must unite. Yeah, I would agree there. Absolutely. So yeah, so I'm gonna put the link in the chat once again. And then, of course, family, you all can tap in and be part of the conversation. So it says, yes, we have unions, but over time, they get corrupted by big business. Our president was a former leader in the unions, and now he's a billionaire. Understood. Okay, and I take it you're talking about the current president of South Africa. We tend to find that here in the United States as well. Most presidents become wealthy once they come to office, right? So this is an issue, and corruption is a major issue, right? And this is something when we talk about the neo-colonial puppets, right? Neo-colonial cronies, right? Typically, they are enriched personally, but to the chagrin and detriment of the masses. And we know when we talk about historically, even with not only colonialism on the continent, but even, of course, during the transatlantic slave trade, we tend to find that oftentimes it was elites that were acting upon their best interests rather than the interests of the masses. That's put us in this, some would argue, 500 plus year quagmire. So definitely, all right, we got some sister love going on. I want to appreciate that. Definitely want to hear from you all. The link is in the description, family. The link is in the chat. As you all know, you're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, in conjunction with Equaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and the home of internet news and information. Once again, family, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you hit the notification bell as well. Make sure you're a blessing to the show, Venmo, Cash App, and then most importantly, via the super chat. Mr. Sandman, what's going on? I see you repping Philly hard here. Okay.
Yeah, you know, chilling, man. How you, man?
I'm doing all right, man. You know, it's still Old State all day. You know what I'm saying? We still, hey, we're gonna make it 10 years in a row on Penn State this year. You know that, right?
Hey, we'll see. Like I always say, you know what I'm saying? It is what it is. You know what I mean? Hey,
No doubt,
man,
no doubt.
yeah,
All right,
but
so
you know,
you
I'm mainly a an NFL fan.
okay? I mean, if
Yeah.
I was you, I'd be an NFL fan too, because I mean, I ain't got nothing going on the college scene. Yeah, I get it. I get it. I'll be ducking that smoke too if I was you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so the question is xenophobia in South Africa, huh? Yeah, I mean I heard a few things about it briefly on another one of the Pan African channels. I think they was talking about how like Nigerians are coming to South Africa for job opportunities.
Ghanaians as well. Those are two of the most prominent groups that from what I read, that I saw.
Yeah, yeah, man. Guineans and West a lot of West Africans, particularly Nigerians, they have a tendency to like they hustlers, man. Wherever the money at, they gonna go to it, you know. And it's not just in South Africa. You can find them all over the place. There's Nigerians all over the place in the United States, trying to get to the bread. They in China, they in Korea, they in Europe, they everywhere. So I don't understand why the people in South Africa is surprised that they see Nigerians and
Well,
Guineas out there, you know, wherever the money is, you know, a Nigerian gonna show up.
part of the issue is because of the scarce resources. As I stated, I don't know if you were on the platform when I read my article, but whites in South Africa hoard the resources, right? And so you have, of course, all of the non-white others in South Africa fighting for, crumbs. And so as a result, that creates a tension where you have people who are coming, migrant workers coming in, competing with actual citizens for jobs, because then those, like, as the brother stated, but the SS77A stated, they're able to undermine the people who are, actual South African citizens who are fighting for a a decent wage or a fair wage, because they know if the person is a migrant worker, they could pay them far less. Same thing that happens here in the United States.
Right, yeah, that's an issue all over the world, whereas though Nigerians would take that cut just to make a profit in Korea, in China, in Europe, or in America. And you know what I mean, the conversion rate of cash to I guess their naira in their country is supplements their income, and they, you know, that works out for them. I think the issue with the people in South Africa is they don't have control of those resources like you just mentioned. So they're not the ones benefiting off of the profit, you know. Uh, so I guess their beef should be with the proprietors or the owners of those businesses that are opening up those businesses and are, you know, sharing the wealth with the citizens of South Africa. You know, that's unfortunate. You know how they're getting robbed. You know, and I don't really see any solution for them to take control of those resources other than, you know, some form of violence. But if they were to go that way, then I don't know. It seems
Well,
like
real quick,
that'll be more negative than positive.
very quickly, Mr. K and SS77A, just take this conversation to the live, right? You all are kind of going back and forth via the chat, which is great. But I think what we can do, of course, is tap in on the live, and that way you all can have a more productive conversation. Once again, you do not have the camera up. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Or I don't. It doesn't even necessarily have to be violence. I mean, the president can simply nationalize the all of the industries. That is something that could happen. Now, the issue there is you would have to make sure that when you put people in place, they actually know how to run the actual industries, the businesses. For example, when we talk about, and people say, "Oh, you're pushing for socialism." Well, I mean, this is what we find in Scandinavian countries. Really, all it is a situation where the taxing, the way people are taxed, is different, right? But that what that does, it keeps people from they're being the what extremely impoverished. right? So something to consider. Let's see here. Says Mr. Well, that's Dr. Lumumba. Now Mr. is Doctor, but I'm respecting my name, right? I'll support United Africa, but regional integration will be better for now. It'll need systems cloning, right? I can agree with, of course, regional, starting off at the regional level. Watching from South Africa, African solutions for African problems. Violence is wrong and unaccepted. Illegal activities is wrong. As South African, want our brothers and sisters to fix country. It's about knowing to separate the men from the boys, okay? Basically, with those Africans that don't want unity, that don't be, only work with those that do. Very true. So yeah, you all could tap in. The links in the description, link is in the chat. But that's one solution I would argue. You can nationalize of course, those industries.
Yeah, nationalize the industry, but then if you nationalize the industry and you tax the owners of those businesses, that's going to raise the prices of our retail products that we're getting for pennies on the dollar here in the United States. So it's
Well, it
going to
doesn't
have like,
necessarily. Well, I'm not saying that you would. Well, no. When you raise to everyone's would pay a higher tax, not just the owners. Like, so we talk about Scandinavia, right? We talk about Sweden, Copenhagen, whatever, Denmark. Everyone pays higher taxes, not just those who are at the top.
right. Well, all right. So what I'm saying is, okay, the Nigerians are coming to South Africa for opportunities in mining, right? They're mining natural resources. Now, the reason why those European businesses, I assume the European businesses are owned by European proprietors or what have you. Um, they can get the actual product itself, like I don't know, maybe lithium or what have you, or other natural resources that they get in from South Africa, and they'll use those materials to make like cell phones or other like electronic devices that they sell internationally. But the reason why we can buy a cellular phone in the United States for a few $100s to $1,000 is because those white owned companies that own those microchip companies could go to South Africa and get those materials for pennies on a dollar and then flip it for a profit. So what I think is what will happen is if South African government was to nationalize those companies and force them to pay more taxes for on the product that they're manufacturing in South Africa, those companies will push like an Apple will push those costs of manufacturing onto the consumer internationally. So I think that uh I don't know, it's a balance in that, whereas though we all have to pay a little bit extra, or either that or the companies themselves that are making a profit are going to have to submit to less of a profit on the actual manufacturing of these electronic devices, and in doing so that's going to hurt the stock market, so to speak, because now they're reporting less profit due to them having to pay higher taxes for manufacturing the resources necessary to for the product that they're selling.
Yeah, but I don't know if that would necessarily. I mean, we look at somewhere like Saudi Arabia, right, where they have the state controls the oil industry,
Mhm.
right? I mean, it can be done. The issue is that the focus is the neo-colonialists want to maintain, of course, a monopoly over those industries. That's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah, that's true, and that's why I mentioned that. That's why I asked the question: were these European companies that are running the mining business that are opening up jobs for Nigerians or Gambians to come in there to work. Now, those oil factories in the Middle East, right? They're owned by Saudi Arabians,
Hmm.
so they're sharing on the profit with their other um, Arabic people. But if these companies are owned by Europeans from France or what have you, or another country in Europe, or even an American based company, then there's more pieces of the pie to cut, you know. So it's South African government needs they cut, the Europeans who run the business need their cut, the people that they're selling the material to make the microchips or the cellular phones need their cut. You know, there's more middlemen as opposed to it's getting manufactured and purified in Saudi Arabia by the Saudi Arabians themselves, and they're getting retail prices as opposed to, you know what I'm saying? They there's less hands in the pie to grab a piece of the pie. So I don't know. There is going to have to somehow. Like I said, I don't know everything about what's going on. So hopefully these companies that's in South Africa, they're South African people that are sharing the wealth with the South African people in general. And I don't know, but if there's a lot of people with their hands in the pie, it's just going to raise the prices on everything for everybody.
Right. And so I see snapshot says xenophobic South Africans are a very big problem for Pan Africanists. Well, I would argue xenophobia by any group of black people, any black person is a problem for Pan Africanists, right? I don't think that's something that is germane only in South Africa. For example, Brother SS778 stated, this is something that was prominent last year we saw in Ghana, right? And I remember, having an exchange where they were like, well, they talking about building a temple or some type of community center in a particular neighborhood. And I said, okay, how? And the question I asked was, how is, and I mean, we're talking about vitriol, and these are individuals who you never see them typically talking negatively about colonizers, right? I said, well, how is them building a community center or a temple in your neighborhood adversely affecting you? Couldn't get an answer. Right. And so we talk about this strategy of divide and conquer, right? Divide and conquer. It's a real issue that we find amongst African people on the continent and in the diaspora. And I would argue part of this is learned behavior. We're distrustful of each other, but we tend to find on the macro level we're smiling in the face of colonizers. Right. And so this is something that we have to push back against. We have to. But snapshot, I hope you could tap in and be part of the conversation. Mr. K, once again, as you know, come be part of the convo, right? You do not have to cam up, and you yet can use the pseudonym, which I presume you're already doing, to be part of the conversation. Sister Shy, you could tap in as well, because I mean, you could even talk about Sister Shy. I believe, if I remember correctly, you have a background on social work. I definitely would love to get your perspective on this as well. So definitely tap in, family. As you all know, you're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment initiative where we believe we gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, in conjunction with Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, the home of Africa Center News and Information. And we're currently having a convo with, of course, the Keystone State's finest, right, Mr. Sandman, right? We know Keystone State, they're not as great as the Buckeye State, where we know we're him, not them. But, be that as it may, we're having a great conversation. Are you in Philly right now? Are you in the Illidale right now?
No, I'm not inside of the city. I'm right outside of the city in a suburb of the city in New Jersey
Okay, so
right now.
what they told you is you can't come back home. I get it. You was kicked out your hood. I get it. I get it. I get it. Right. They
Oh
told you can't
no,
come back
no,
home. Okay.
no.
Okay.
My roots, my roots in North Philadelphia are so deep.
Come on, man.
I,
So
I
you
own
say
that city.
you saying you're a Broad Street bully? Stop it. You a Broad Street bully now?
No, I ain't no Broad Street bully, but they know.
Yeah. So very quickly, SS77A. Once again, brother, you're more than welcome, or sister, to tap in and be part of the conversation. Colonial powers worked with some ethnic groups in the past, and this has left these ethnic groups with the impression that they're better than other ethnic groups on the continent. This is very true. This is very true. Uh, how do we address this issue? Right? How do we address this issue? I definitely want to hear from you there. But once again, tap in. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Tap in so we can hear from you. That way we can have a free-flowing conversation rather than one that is intermittent, in which you, of course, we only respond or view your text messages. The challenge that I see, provide triggers for revolution. Okay, the challenge that I see is that there are too many qualifiers for anyone's humanity to be recognized on the continent. One has to convert to Islam, Christianity, or be part of a particular tribe. We use the term ethnic group. So definitely want you to tap in as well to be accepted for one's humanity, to be recognized, overstood. I would say you're not understood, overstood. Provide triggers for revolution. Please tap in, be part of the conversation. Once again, you do not have to cam up. You do not have to cam up to be part of the convo, and you can use a pseudonym. Definitely want to hear more from you. And of course, we want to have a solution-based conversation, because what we're discussing, particularly and what's going on in South Africa, is not germane only to South Africa. We find this throughout the continent. We will find this here in the Western world, where many individuals can't see the forest from the trees or see beyond their immediate circumstance to understand the global factors that play a role in what's going on. We know one of the important roles that Pan-Africanism plays is helping provide education to understand that anti-Black racism is global, and that this is a global system of anti-Blackness. And what you're facing in Chicago is analogous to what's going on amongst Black people in Rio de Janeiro, right? Or in, of course, Mogadishu, or, of course, Dakar. So, Sister Michelle, what's going on?
Pleasure, everyone. Hello, Mr. Sandman. Long time. How are you, sir? Congratulations,
Hi,
Dr. Lumba, on the wedding. I've been trying to catch a live for a long time.
No problem.
But in reference to the topic at hand, I think the quote unquote xenophobia amongst, especially in the Black diaspora, has to do with our overall oppression. Us not being able to develop systems that keep us unified. Again, now we're fighting for scarce resources, and therefore it's manifesting itself, like South Africa, here in America with the Black immigrant groups. Again, because we were not globally allowed to enter the global economy as a people, now we're fighting each other within ourselves. That's my take on it in short.
No, I think that is an adequate take. Absolutely. I'm glad. I like how you one of the things that you mentioned was this issue of we weren't allowed to enter of course, a global economy. Well, when I think of the work of Walter Rodney, this concept of world systems theory, right? This concept and idea that Black people were othered in a myriad of ways, but particularly economically, and that we were left to only be at the periphery of the economic global system, not at the core. Right. And so I think you're spot on. That's why I was hoping that you could tap in and be part of the conversation.
And then also another factor with us is there's also underlying issues where the dominant society has strategically wanted to reduce our populations. But however, they always wanted our labor. So those are like little intricacies we need to see, like in South Africa. The South African economy, they need the cheap labor, but they know the citizens of South Africa demand higher wages. They're going to demand their rights. They know, their ins and outs. However, if you bring in another group of people who aren't as familiar, aren't as unified, as stratified, we can use them. And then the other group is looking like, hey, what about us? And then therefore there's a friction. And then we need to have, again, because we don't control our education system, our medium system, to really have these larger scale discussions, now it manifests itself.
Agreed.
And I
Agreed.
believe, that coincides with the global economy, whereas though the cost of living in South Africa might be higher than the cost of living in some other West African countries. Therefore, um, those people in those other West African countries could go to South Africa and live off of those wages, whereas though a person who lives in South Africa can't live off of the wages that they would be given working in those same conditions. So it's like maybe there needs to be some type of new global world order or an international dollar that's like kind of baseline, whereas though you can't just go across borders and have make money in a different country and then take that money out of that country to your country and buy a whole bunch of real estate with it, so to speak, because the cost of living is so much higher for those people. It seems like it's an unfair balance in economics. Either that, or you gotta if you don't go to an international dollar, then you have to like control your borders and don't allow companies to give jobs or pay people who aren't citizens of that country.
I agree. I agree with you, Mr. Sandman. In terms of that, then when are we as Black people going to? We may have to step out as a people to say, "Hey, this is our social and economic systems." The Jewish community. I don't want to. The other communities come out together and say, "This is our community, and this is our socioeconomic system." So it prevents the infighting. Again, we've never been allowed to have some type of a real unification per se, unquote unquote. I guess somebody else is externally controlling our social economic system. Like even this form we're using is controlled by someone else and can, if I say the wrong things, it will shut this down. Like we are not in control of our destiny overall. Yes, we get little privileges, but again, it's not enough to make the differences we need to proceed as a people. Because Mr. Sandman, you made a very good point. When the Europeans came to Africa, we were here, we were there as different ethnic groups. This so-called unification was kind of been forced upon us. So now somebody in Ghana needs to go to South Africa to make a better living. Okay, nobody's questioning the larger scale of the socioeconomic system. There's no, hey, I just know if I go to South Africa, I can get opportunity. If I go to Europe, I can get opportunity. That's all they know. We're not thinking in terms of a larger scale as a people. And I think that's something we need to talk about. And I'm glad, this is a forum we can at least get the discussions started. We need to start thinking on a larger scale as a people. And that's a big industry. And I'm not going to get us too far off the topic. Sports, for example, I'm talking about Black men. It was black. And let me tell you something. If it wasn't for Black people in sports, baseball, football, and all these activities, Black people have transformed these sports and that business. But again, the proceeds don't come back to us as a community where we can transform ourselves. I think if we, on a large scale in terms of entertainment, what Black people have done in entertainment, if we were able to get even a certain percentage and reinvest in our communities, it would also help reduce some of these tensions. But we're not. It goes through other communities. And so those who are left behind, we're still fighting each other. Like for example, in South Africa, there's resources there, but the resources aren't being brought to the people, the national inhabitants, for them to benefit. So now the powers that be are bringing cheaper labor in as opposed to using the labor structure that was there of the Black South Africans. Again, this cycle continues. Again, so when are we as a people going to look at the bigger scale and say, hey, we need to do something that's strictly for ourselves? Again, it's not about hate. It's not about trying to hurt anybody else. When are we as a people going to stand up and say, hey, we need our own institutions?
Yeah, and I think so. There's
and say it's for us, and strictly say it's for us.
And so Snapshot has spoken to this. We talked about this, I think, last week. Snapshot just mentioned that in the comments. But part of the issue in SS77A, if you can, please tap in, be part of the conversation. I think we could really dig a little deeper into some of the comments that you're making in the chat. One, it takes education to understand that these issues are globally connected and rooted in the domination of Black people. It takes education to do that. If not, people won't be able to see beyond themselves, right? In their particular socioeconomic condition. The second issue is building institutions takes a lot. It takes commitment, right? And I'm gonna be quite honest with you. There was an organization I was working with here in Dayton that I left over a decade ago because they said they weren't interested in building institutions to address the needs of our people. So I said, there's no need for me to be part of this. They said, well, but you have a great name and our name. And I said, I don't give a French toast about a name. I'm not going to be with something that isn't actually doing anything tangible. Right. And so this is the major issue. I talked about this, Lord have mercy. 8 years ago in my master's thesis, Is Pan-Africanism Dead? And I talked about Pan-Africanist organizations have to move beyond simply providing cultural programming. We have to be engaging in institution building to serve, the needs of our people. We go in on the church, we go in on the mosque, we go in on the synagogue, we go in on the temple. Cool, rightfully so. But we have to provide an alternative. And the problem is people aren't willing to do that because it's real work. Real work. Yes, I would agree. I hope you could tap in and be part of the combo because if I remember correctly, I think you're from Liberia. Definitely like for you to tap in because, of course, if I remember correctly, you being from Liberia, you may have had an experience with, of course, brothers and sisters from the continent, the Afro-Liberians, and of course, brothers and sisters who were indigenous to Liberia. And some of those issues there. We can talk about the brainwashing that took place for Afro-Liberians. We dropped the ball when we embraced Western culture and stopped caring about our histories, and now we lost ourselves because we no longer find that connection with each other. Go ahead, Sister Michelle.
Yes, also not only just a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice. You, Dr. Lumber, to do this show is a sacrifice for you. I mean, I'm just saying, just to even do this is a sacrifice. I mean, don't get me wrong, it still needs to be done, but the sacrifice that's involved, I can see us coming together looking good, but then the sacrifice is going to be involved, your family and your socioeconomic status. You may not be invited to certain places anymore. Yes, when you start talking Black, there can be some repercussions.
Also, I think we gotta be real with ourselves, in that the small hats, they good at that money stuff. They good at playing the system. They good at working around things. They come up with a lot of crafty and clever ideas to manipulate the system. So we just gotta step our game up. Say it straight up, because who's to say that even if we was to organize that they wouldn't be able to circumvent that and flip that on us too? Because they've been doing it to the whole world. You dig?
Yeah, but with the small hat community, but they also unified in it. They understand when Vlad TV and the Farrakhan situation occurred, he stood his ground, even though he said, quote unquote, saying, I'm not practicing, but he still stood his ground. We as a people, I don't see color. Fair is fair. Even take a neutral stance to say, you know what? I had no comment. No, we still want to put our 2 cents in.
Yeah, I mean that's an important point that you brought up, because a lot of us, we look at
hold on quick. Sister Michelle, I think you're cooking right now. So I would like for you to continue to stir that pot very quickly, if you could. What do you attribute that to, and how do we get out of that mindset?
Survive. Every group understand, especially young men of other communities and cultures. It's the men that understand survival. Like, you want your survival of yourself and your people at large. So you understand from the get-go that you need to make certain decisions. Like many years ago, I know we had this white guy, we kind of we kept in contact. Even though he grew up here in a majority Black era, he was Caucasian, I should say. Grew up around, hung with us, dated a few sisters, all that stuff. By the end of the day, he's married to somebody of his community. He's transition, even though he has some issue, family issues, he's been able to transition out of it because at the end of the day, he wanted survival of himself and his lineage. Again, he's still a cool dude, but at the end of the day, what I realized as I got older, learning about Dr. Chris Wilson and Amos Wilson, that's when I understood it. He was looking at the end of the day, he still, regardless of his circumstance, wanted survival of himself. If you understand what I'm saying. Because he could have, like, for example, he had a cousin. His cousins, the female cousins, who were white, they married black and had black kids and everything. But he didn't. I guess he didn't want that. And he's just
and on top of that is, we have like an imperialistic type mindset in the black world, whereas though we like to divide ourselves, like, okay, I'm this level, you're that level, you're this level, instead of us all coming together as one group and saying we're all together. The lowest man, the lowest person on the totem pole is just important as the top man at the totem pole, and we all look out for each other, because what do? Soon as we make a little bit of money, we move out the hood, and then we want to buy a big house and get away from each other. And then all the people that's in the hood still that don't got no money, we just say, oh well, that's your problem. You need to go ahead and find the bread like the way I found it, instead of sharing the pot. Well, that's the cause of a huge divide too.
So yes, so I'm going to push back just a little bit, and Sister Michelle, I want you to tag, because we believe in diversity of thought. Sister Shy, Sister Carrie, everybody can tap in. We want to have this conversation, but I'm going to push back just a little bit. I agree with you on the surface level, but I think you have to go a little deeper. There was something after white flight in America. There was something called middle class flight, right? Where black people means left the hood, left the ghetto, left the inner city. Part of the reason was because what? And we know this. If you are of means and you are in an urban environment that is not well-to-do, there's a high probability that your car will be stolen or that your house will be broken into or robbed. And this isn't hyperbole, right? I remember growing up, our car was stolen 4 or 5 times, a family vehicle. It was a van, for crying out loud. And so people, and I recall, this is probably 10 years ago when I was with my ex, and we were, of course, staying together. And there were some issues where, of course, we had to get up and go to work in the morning. And there were people, it was like 2:00 in the morning, they were blasting the music. So eventually I got up and said, hey, man, I yelled out the window, man, we got to go to work in the morning, turn that crap off. Right? And then the next day I get up, go to work. I had a conversation with my uncle over lunch, and my uncle was like, yeah, in the suburbs, that wouldn't happen. Right? So some of this isn't just, I want to get away from my people. Part of it is what? Also, we have to look at what? Lower resource schools. So you want your child to go to school where they have better resources. I have a cousin who grew up in the inner city like me. We're 2 years apart. When I was a junior, he was a freshman. His father moved him to the suburbs, the northern suburbs of Dayton. And he talked about how in Dayton public schools, for lunch, you get a slice of pizza and like an apple juice. He says, man, we were getting full meals, salads, fruit, bottled water. You could get seconds. He said, I couldn't believe it because we were going to better resource schools. So it isn't just, oh man, I want to get away from black people. There's some actual real social issues that will lead to one say, we are of means, and I'm trying to protect my family. I want my child to be able to go to the park and not have to worry about someone trying to stab them because they beat them in a basketball game. And this may sound like hyperbole, but these are things I experienced growing up. I was playing basketball. I was 17 years old at the park, and I beat a guy in basketball. He pulled out a butcher knife on me. This actually happened. You see, and this is not to say that suburbs are immune from crime and poor behavior, but you from the Illidale. If you go back 20, 30 years, it was a norm for people to be at the parks hooping on the blacktop. Not so much nowadays because of all the shooting.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I've seen it plenty of times. You know, you're on the court and people get to talking trash, then the fight break out, then somebody run to their trunk and start cocking their weapon and want to handle the situation with violence, and then hopefully somebody calm him down and tell him to chill out. It's just a basketball game. Yeah, we do all kinds of dumb stuff like that. But I think like it comes to a point where we got to take responsibility, accountability for what's going on in our neighborhoods. You know, why I know we got to step to people like that. We don't know what that guy been through. You know, I mean, we live in these large communities inside the inner city, and we don't know people's parents. We don't know their families. We don't know their situations. Maybe this guy has like some type of mental problem where he can't control his emotions and he want to take handle everything violently.
Well,
We
real
don't
quick,
know his parents. We don't know what
but
happened to his family. So it's like we the white folks in the small hats ain't gonna fix it,
right.
and the Latinos ain't gonna fix it. We gotta fix it, or we just going to stay divided.
But a couple things, right? And I like what you said, but if I can dissect or deconstruct, one, if the young man lacks impulse control, that's not a mental health issue. That's learned behavior. You have a son, if I remember correctly.
That's correct.
And how old is he, if you don't mind me asking?
He's a young man in his
Is he
his
single
young
digit or double digit?
he's double.
Okay, cool. So in order for it, and this is something I talk to my parents about all the time. I was like, when I was growing up, I hated y'all, right? But now, you realize, that they actually had your best interest at heart. I said, as a child, my parents would discipline me, right? And then I said, okay, I don't like the fact that I'm being disciplined, so I'm going to control my person so that they don't have to control me. I would tell my children, if you fail to control yourself, somebody else will, right? What happens in these type of households is there was never a time where the child was disciplined and held accountable for their behavior. So being irascible became part of their personality, right? The African proverb states the ruin of a nation begins in the homes of its people. Now, as someone who's gone out into the community, spoke with young people, have done that type of work, it helps, but it's typically a drop in the bucket because you might drop jewels. You may spend an hour with them, once a week. But they're going home to a chaotic environment in which poor, unhealthy, self-defeating, self-destructive behavior is being modeled. I watched the episode of Divorce Court this morning. Just scrolling on YouTube and I saw it. And the couple it was a black couple that were getting a divorce. The brother says, well, we're getting a divorce. One of the issues I have is my wife gives me a lot of lip. I don't like that. And he says, as a result, my daughter looks up to her mother, and now she's emulating her mother, and she's giving me a lot of lip as well, which is completely unacceptable, right? So you might go to a young lady and say, Sister Michelle, listen, sister, this is where you would need to comport yourself, But she's going to an environment that's teaching her, knowingly or unknowingly, to engage in behavior that's unbecoming. You see what I'm saying? So it's easy to say, oh, we got to take control of our community. No, because the community starts in the home. And when you start having to address how the person's being raised, they're going to say, you better get your monkey behind out of here. A great example of this was in the TV show A Different World. Brother Dwayne, he's a passionate professor. He cares about these young people, right? He has like an after-school enrichment plan where he's taking his time as a professional and going into the inner city community and working with these young men. He comes to the young man's home, and the father pulls a gun on him and says, I can smoke you right now. And who do you think my son gonna think the real man is? This is what we're up against. So it's not as easy. So we just go out, shoot. The parents will smoke your behind.
But you know what? If I may add, I see systematic is because the system is allowing these behaviors to happen. Because when I used to support men and a family, we were going to child support court. I think all of this is manifestation of the system, because if we had like a Afrocentric system where if I had a problem, I can go through these systems to report, so I can take you to a higher level. So if, like, for example, that guy who pulled the gun on Dwayne, I remember that episode. Wow, you're taking me back. Okay, you pulled that gun. So guess what? I'm not calling the police per se, but I'm calling it like a community security system. And the community security system is going to say, "Hey, you did this, but because we all, because we all are the same community, we're going to have a discussion. We're going to mediate and see how the best way to move forward."
Well, sister, I would say this much.
And then also,
social work hat. But I would say this: if the person is pulling a gun on you because you're trying to work with that child to have a better future,
there's something wrong with him. He's mental.
So the community, they don't even think a community or African center by that point.
But at that time, the communities need to come in. Communities come in and consequence that man, help him get the treatment he needs. Probably remove that child, not necessarily remove, but hey, separate them for some time until we can get some type of balance going on.
Well, but here's the other issue, and some people don't know this. I'm gonna speak to this. I saw an episode of Judge Mathis talk about. Sometimes it's not an issue of treatment. Some people just want to be criminals.
That's true.
You gotta be honest. I know, because I used to be a miscreant. It didn't matter if I went to some program or my parents paid for me. Listen, this is what I'm doing. And I ain't tired of going to jail. What? So I'm going to play this very quickly, family. Fair use, fair use, fair use. I'm going to play this clip. So some may have seen the episode, like we're dating ourselves if we have, and some may have not. But I'm going to play this. And hopefully, like I said, fair use. This is season 6, episode 11, right, of the, I think, Immortal, right, TV show A Different World.
You cannot reach the child. Reach the parent. Wasn't that smooth with Michael's mother?
Yeah. Hey, baby, you were real smooth. I like the way you kept talking even though she slammed the door in your face.
Hi. I am good in these crisis situations.
You go, girl. Oh,
Bye.
You got it. You silly. What?
Run, door.
Hey, sweeties. Yo, man, you got a problem? Oh, no, I'm sorry, my brother. My name is Dwayne. And this is my wife, Whitley. I'm Loco.
Lovely name, Loco.
We're looking for Billy's mother and father.
I'm his mother and father. Now, what y'all want?
Oh, I'm a professor at Hillman College. I'm Billy's volunteer role model while he's on furlough.
So
I'm trying to get him to stop from throwing his life away, man. He was fighting some kid in my class today because the other kid was from Coolidge. I mean, they were talking about killing each other, brother.
who are?
Well, that's not the point, man.
The hell it ain't. I let my son know. If you let someone kick his butt, he's gonna get a real whooping when he comes home.
Brother, fighting is not gonna be enough to get him by in life.
I didn't make the rules, and neither did Billy.
But you can break those rules, Mr. Loco. Weren't you rather your little son take a nice little 13-year-old girl to the ice cream parlor?
Do you see any damn ice cream parlors around here?
Excuse me, brother. Excuse me. Baby, I think now it'd be a good time for you to go wait in the car.
No, Dwayne. I am not leaving you alone in this building with that man.
Sweetie,
Dwayne?
You are so brave, baby. But really, it'd be safer if I talk to him one-on-one. It's a man thing, baby. Come on. Give me 5 minutes.
Five minutes, Dwayne.
Look, Loco.
Get on with it, man.
Say, bro, I know what it's like to grow up in a rough environment. I mean, but just because things are rough doesn't mean we have to be victims of the ghetto. Hey, strong brothers like you need to build up the community, not destroy it. My dad kept me in line. That's the only way I stayed out of trouble.
Man, step off.
Hey, listen to me. If your son doesn't make it through this week, he's going back to the detention center. Is that what you want for him?
I don't need some suit and tie wearing brother to teach me how to be a father to my son.
Well, then teach your son how to be a man, Chief. Who you think you are, fool?
Huh? Brother, come around here acting like you all that. I'm taking care of my boy. See what I'm saying? My father wasn't even around for me.
Hands off me, man.
What you barking at, fool? Man, I could smoke you before you get halfway down the hall. You want to try your luck? Now, who's my boy gonna think the man is?
5 minutes.
Now that I've seen it, I have some questions about it now that I'm older and seeing this again.
Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
Okay, for the first thing, with Dwayne going in there, he also needs to understand the father's circumstances. You know, there's levels to this. He said, like you said, he didn't have his
You're
father.
breaking up on us. You're breaking up on us.
Oh gosh, can you hear me again?
I can hear you better now. So if you could start from the top, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Now that I'm older and seeing this again, I see some challenges Dwayne Wayne had when encountering the father. You know, trying to question his style as a parent, I think was wrong. Maybe going there with Whitley was kind of wrong.
Right.
Assuming mother and father was wrong. So he came in there making their assumptions, and he took it personal.
But here's the issue, and I agree with that. But the reality is, when you're dealing with someone like that, it wouldn't matter how you came at them. I mean, if someone is talking about I'm going to smoke you in front of my own child, it doesn't matter if he came over there with a turkey or a ham underneath his arm. The person is crazy. He said his name is Loco. Loco.
And there's a reason why he got the name Loco, because he probably had to be loco to survive.
No. You don't have to be anything. You don't have to be like that to survive. And of course, I'm just one person. I grew up in the real hood, not the rap hood. Literally. Right? I'm talking about a cop would get killed, body found in the dumpster. Right? You do not have to be crazy to survive. I can recall vividly, we're going back 30-some years. My older brother, okay, it's my sister, my brother, and myself. My brother would cut people's grass in the spring and the summertime to make money. My brother would take me along, hold the gas can, and I would pick up sticks in people's yards before he cut the grass, and he'd give me like maybe 10% or 20% of what he made. We're walking with the gas can and my parents' lawnmower, probably 7-8 blocks to get to our grandparents' house. And young man that we didn't even know, a group of young men, attack us and try to jump us. My brother pulled out a lighter and said, "Listen, I'm gonna douse you, throw this gas on you, and set you on fire." We didn't even know these individuals, right? But then we didn't end up becoming local or crazy or adopting that type of mindset simply because we grew up in an environment where we had to defend ourselves. That is something that is, in my opinion, that is cultivated in two ways. One in the household. I'm going to quote one of Brother Sandman's compatriots, right from the Illidale, Dr. Umar Johnson, who we all know is a problematic individual. But one of the things he stated that was right, a broken clock was right twice a day. He stated what? Many children are growing up in households that are criminal incubators. The second issue is oftentimes parents aren't doing their job. They don't care much about the children. This isn't just a black thing. A lot of parents nowadays are lazy parents. And so guess what? They allow their children to what? Hang out with anyone, engage in particular behavior that's unbecoming, problematic, and they get into trouble. This is just the reality. Literally.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to smoke your child's teacher because he's trying to talk to you about your child getting in a fight at his school, then obviously, you know, you need to be locked up or put in some type of institution because you're a menace to society and you're a danger to the people around you and you need some help. But as far as like that particular scene on that television show, one, like I agree with what the lady said, you know, he shouldn't have brought a woman with him to talk to that man.
Yeah.
And he should have brought other men with him to talk to him. And maybe he could have said it in a different way or addressed it in a different way, maybe offered to take him out to eat and break bread with the brother and then have this conversation as opposed to just being at his front door and addressing him aggressively.
Well, I don't think he was aggressive, but one thing to think about, he said, you know, they were talking about killing each other and or deleting each other. I'm sorry, we're on YouTube. And then he's like, well, yeah, darn right. So then that's when he realized, like, man, I'm dealing with somebody who's loco, right? This dude ain't just his name. He's proud of his son talking about offing somebody simply because they're from a different neighborhood.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, quick question from Mr. K. Curious question to the panel. Do you recall a community spirit in your neighborhood during your childhood? Yes. In fact, I'm gonna answer the question, then everyone else can. So growing up, and I've always told people I'm very proud of the fact that I'm from Dayton View, USA. So I told my son and my daughter vividly growing up in Dayton View, which is a neighborhood on the west side of Dayton, Northwest Dayton. I vividly recall growing up that Dayton View, we were competitive about everything. We're competitive about sports. We're competitive about academics, spelling bee, everything. We were extremely competitive. And so, but there was a community spirit mindset that, hey, we're from the View. Dayton is a mid-sized city. I remember growing up playing football for the rec leagues, and there probably was Dayton is in terms of geographic space, it's probably about 56 square miles, which is analogous to the size of Boston from a footprint standpoint, not population. And we had about maybe 10 or 11 rec centers. And so it was like, hey, I got to bring it home, and you got to represent for Princeton and Dayton View and everything like that. So I do vividly recall that. Yes. So I'll let everyone else answer the question as well.
Yes, I grew up in the DC Maryland borderline. So when we used to live in the apartment complex, I remember there was a sense of community coming out with music at the time. Music wasn't as questionable as it is. It was just a different spirit, and just having those formative years of my childhood, and then of course 10 years, a few years later, of course, dynamics changed. So yes, I do remember the community spirit.
Mm-hmm. I could give an example of how much there was a community spirit, community concept. So this is probably 1990. I'm really dating myself. I think I was in first grade, June of 90. It was toward the last day of school, and I walking home, I cut through somebody's grass. And when I got home, my parents knew about it. I'm like, how did y'all even know this person? I had to go walk all the way back up to the person's house, knock on the door, and apologize for cutting through their yard on my way home from school. This is June of 90. Mr. Sandman, community spirit.
Yeah, community spirit, man. That's what it is. You know what I'm saying? I grew up in Philadelphia, and the neighborhood that I grew up in, my barber was black. My local, the guys that owned the local corner store was black. The soul food joint down the street was black owned. My doctor, we had a doctor in the neighborhood who worked out of out of his own house. Kind of like what Dr. Heathcliff Huxtable on the Cosby Show did, where he had his office in his basement. Yeah, that was my personal doctor. So, growing up, that's what we did back in the 80s. It was everything was black, so I never really even seen any white people growing up unless I went out of town or one of my teachers or something like that. So, yeah, it was more community oriented, and then it kind of just changed. I think like when we depend on each other, I think we cooperate with each other more so, and I think that's the benefit of capitalism. Where I could go and I see a black face when I need some food, or I go and see a black face when I need my hair cut, or I go to see a black face when I, go to worship. Then we start to work with each other more. And if there are issues in the community with people getting out of hand, we all know what's going on. Like, okay, the Raheem down the street or Mookie down the street acting up, and my parent know Mookie's parents, and my grandparents know Mookie's grandparents, and we all from the same neighborhood, and we'll walk. We could walk over there, or she could walk over here and say, hey, Mookie out of pocket, Raheem out of pocket, blah blah blah. He been doing this on the neighborhood. Have you seen him? Like, yeah, I seen him, but like I need some help. His daddy ain't around, or his daddy locked up. This, that, and the third, but then it gets to a point where it gets kind of out of hand, and it gets out of control with the violence, and we can't mediate it anymore. And then the black owned barbershop gets shut down because somebody got shot in there, and then the guy who owned the corner store, the grocery store, he leaves town because he's getting older and he's not making as much money as the Koreans that just moved in and opened up a store because they can sell their stuff for half the price or whatever, you know. So and then it just continues to, like, you know, go
Domino effect,
downhill over,
Mhm.
yeah, domino effect, and then it all just falls apart, and then we leave, and then, you know, maybe a different demographic comes in to gentrifies the area.
Good. Yes, Mr. Samuel. This is what I speak of, and when I understand reparations, this is an issue for that I support reparations because other communities such as Israel is supported by America via reparations, so they can sustain their society and their culture. So when we ask for reparations, these are what you said is an example of why we need reparations for our community and those behind us, our children and so forth. But however, my concern with us as a people, once we get a little bit of a little bit in our pocket, we quickly to run outside the community. And that's why if I were to support reparations, I do support it, but I would want a caveat saying, hey, this has to stay within the Black community. Because of those various issues, because somebody of another community can come and sell something half price, and next thing you know, we're out of business. And then we lose a staple in our community or an economic hub for ourselves. Again, for me, like I said earlier, is that every group at some level understands survival of their collective, except us. We do. I'm not saying we don't understand it, but it's not enough for us to really understand it, hold it, and be accountable to it. And that's, you know, that's where I will land there.
Yeah, it's a good landing. I gotta handle some business here on a Sunday, but happy Pan African Sunday to y'all, and have a blessed week.
You too.
No
Thank
doubt.
you.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you. All right,
peace
drive
out.
safely.
Yeah, so I
Will
think
do.
that there's one issue that one may be missing, sister. When you talk about people moving out, there are real reasons why people leave certain communities.
I understand, but
they're not safe.
But if we will have the infrastructure to keep it safe, the infrastructure to keep people accountable, the infrastructure, the social, like for example, we have the JSSA communities in the DC area that was specifically to support a certain specific community because they understood that need. We need a Black association, social services for the Black community to understand our dynamics.
I think it goes deeper than that.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna tell you why. Malcolm X mentioned this very quickly. Mr. K says Malcolm X stressed the importance of education. I feel like we need to educate more in the knowledge of political science, economics, social science, military science, and applied science. Overstood. One of the things Malcolm X stated was, he said, in the Black community, you have the highest concentration of police, but yet you have more crime. He says the reason this is the case is because the police are in cahoots with the criminals. We think, and this is done purposely.
Yeah.
So it isn't just social services. Them folks are the ones bringing the crime into the community. Let's be real here.
Yeah. Okay. It is a business line. The court systems, yes, it's a system.
So, right. I mean, in Columbus, I lived in Columbus for 7 years. Do you know how many police officers were found selling drugs in the neighborhoods?
Oh.
Literally, they were convicted, subsequently tried, convicted, sent to prison. I said, so we can have all the social services we want. The people who are supposed to be preventing crime are the ones causing it. I mean, this will be analogous to teaching Black people about fire safety, right? Don't leave something cooking on the stove when you go and take a bubble bath, right? But then in the Black community, we find a whole fire department going into the Black community setting fires.
Yeah.
So what's going on here?
Yes.
And this isn't hyperbole. There's a great book that talks about this. It's titled "The Rich Get Richer, the Rich Get Richer, and the Poor Get Prison." And chapter 1 of the book is titled "Nothing Succeeds Like Failure." Right, Sister Free, yes, which actually happened, by the way. Facts. Nothing succeeds like failure. And they talk about how the goal is not to prevent crime. because there's money to be made as a result of it. Let's be real here. We talk about the issue with setting fires. We know this was an issue, particularly in the 90s. It's kind of reared its ugly head back in the 2010s, where what? White folks, them folks, sometimes in conjunction with individuals who were firemen, were going into black communities. I appreciate the super chat. Make sure you all like the live and subscribe to the channel. Absolutely appreciate the super chat, but sister. Where they were going into black communities and setting churches on fire. And they
because
were
it was real estate. They wanted the real estate.
Right, yeah. And they were actually working with what? Firemen to learn how to use accelerants that it would be hard that would be hard to detect. So this is an issue of where black people just don't know how to control the property or really do fire safety. The people who are supposed to be preventing the problems are the ones causing the problems. We find this in America. We find this on the continent as well.
But also, we also have another thing that a problem we have that other groups don't have is sabotagers. No other group has been victim to sabotage such as ourselves.
Yeah.
No matter what we do, as soon as we look like we're climbing out of something, we get sabotaged as a collective. Like soon as post-civil rights movement, we were getting out, we were looking good. What did it bring? It started bringing drugs and other devices to keep us conquered and divided.
Yes.
And so hence here, 50 years later, you and I are here having a discussion.
Yes.
Like
absolutely.
Other countries, but if you look like somewhere like China, now they're the superpower of the world. They're going toe to toe with the United States. You know, they didn't have that level of infiltration and self-sabotage. The continent of Africa is full of self-sabotage because of the currents.
Yeah, counter-revolutionary insurgents, absolutely.
And so when we talk about us, our family systems, our structures, we also have to leave open to self-sabotage. Like you said, it's burning of the churches. Unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not being able to develop healthy families and loving systems.
Yeah.
Our men and women, the so-called gender wars.
Yeah, you're definitely on point when we talk about unemployment, where we tend to find that particularly brothers who would engender a level of respect, confidence, particularly amongst young men, they typically aren't hired in positions that play a role in youth development.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We talk about promoted dysfunction, right? And particularly in terms of a relationship, talking about gender wars, where we just be honest here, black women in this country are taught to be disrespectful, taught to undermine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? For example, I was having a conversation with my wife, and she was like, my dad always tells me, can you imagine, sister, I get to say my wife. Can you believe it? And she said, my father always tells me, make sure you're being supportive, make sure you're using words of affirmation with your husband. Shoot, come over here. Hey, sister, I ain't saying no crap like that. I'm going to tell him he ain't. Yes. And so we're being socialized to be disempowering, self-defeating, and self-destructive.
But then also, there's another dynamic. It's because some of our women have experienced situations where they have to be defensive, where they had to be vocal, but they also not telling their daughters or not even saying, okay, honey, I need to go to the other room while I talk to your father. Because I may need to talk to you in a certain way, but I don't need you to, I don't need other people.
Right. Absolutely. And I agree with that. So my parents just celebrated their 49th wedding anniversary on Wednesday.
Oh, congratulations. Okay.
Yes. And so I helped them celebrate, my sister and I helped them celebrate. And I always tell people, my dad was hard on us growing up. I was like, man, I can't stand this. But I used to be like, man, I wish I was like everybody else. I ain't had no daddy in my house. Like, seriously, right? I appreciate it now. But I remember, I tell people that if my mother had a problem with the way my father disciplined and corrected us, I didn't know about it. I had no idea. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So these are some of the issues, right? And we find this because now, unfortunately, and we're kind of getting off tracks here. There are individuals in our community who find it empowering to try to undermine men or women.
Yeah, but
yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. I could vividly recall this. And, Dr. C.S. Johnson talks about this. A lot of times we find, he says, sisters in our community are doing this, but this isn't reflective of just the fact that this is a form of Black womanhood. He says that this is just human nature. people realize that hey, they can engage in certain behaviors, and they do.
And they take advantage.
Yeah, they take advantage. He said, this is really human nature. And hey, no one's going to hold us accountable. Cool, I'm going to do whatever I want. He said, this is really where this comes from. He says, women know in all racial groups in America, they have carte blanche in the family court system, right? They know that if they screen abuse, people are going to what? Perk up and listen. A great example, then we're going to bring this back full circle. Everyone knows what happened with the head football coach at Michigan, the black brother.
That was a mess.
This white woman, hold on real quick. This white woman knowingly entered into a consensual relationship with a married man. The University of Michigan they say, University of Michigan, we're a house state, we call them Michigan, but University of Michigan, be professional, have a sense of decorum, has a policy stating you can date if you work at the university, but you can't be the person to be the supervisor. So all he had to do was say, listen, we're dating, we're in a relationship, so she has to work, and she just can't report to me. They just said, cool. They denied it. The University of Michigan, a year and a half before he was fired, interviewed both of them, did a actual investigation, asked her, are you all in a relationship? She says, no, we're not. Now that the relationship is over with, a year and a half later, hey, I want to tell you all that we were in a relationship, and he loses his job, right? Then she goes on the national media and says, oh, I was a victim. I'm doing this to protect women. Really? So you didn't care about the woman that he was cheating on? This is hypocrisy. But why is she doing this? Because she knows she can. She knows that she's able to feign victimhood. People are going to listen to her. And what? She's setting this up because she's going to say the university didn't protect me, even though she lied to them when they tried to protect her when they did an investigation, because she's going to try to file. She's going to talk. I guarantee you within 2 weeks, she's going to file a lawsuit.
But also, she'll also understand Shamar Moore. What's his name? Shamar Moore, the guy. She understands that he has no community. Shamar Moore.
You think about Shamar Moore. That's what that is.
Okay. yeah, I watched him. Yeah, but the thing with him is he has no community of protection. See, that's why they're going. It's easy for her to go after him now because he didn't have a community of protection. See, that's what a lot of black. I don't want to get too off tangents. Wherever you go in life, you still need your ace in the hole, and that's your community of protection. Mm-hmm. He does not have that. When he decided to marry Becky and push the sisters to the side, he lost his community of protection. Besides his mother,
we don't know if he pushed women to the side. He grew up in Kansas for and the other issue is someone who plays sports, someone who was lucky enough to at one point be recruited by some universities. And this isn't just something that we see in the movies like He Got Game, but those white women really throw themselves at brothers. Mm-hmm. I've seen them. I was like, this is unbelievable. And you would think about a lot of these brothers are coming to campus. They don't have a strong sense of racial identity, right? They're not politically or socially mature or understand what's going on. And you have women, throwing themselves. Whatever you want me to do, I would do it. You call them 2 o'clock in the morning. You could drive my daddy's Mercedes Benz. I'll write your papers for you. Yeah, it's off the chain. Off the chain. Literally, I've seen it.
Okay,
I've seen it. And they, throwing themselves. It's like they act like they're maids, concubines, and sous chefs.
Yeah, because I worked with a young man, and that's what happened with him. But unfortunately for him, when he came back to the DC area, he got injured, and
Mm-hmm.
So he shared that.
Yeah, they throw themselves at you.
Then what do we do for our young men to make sure they're politically educated about their identity? So when they go to these environments, they're not.
So part of it is, of course, if you have children, as I did, you have those conversations with them in the home, right? The second issue, and I always tell people, the easy thing to do is create a Juma Mosi Shule, a Saturday school, right? Mm-hmm. And where you have an African-centered curriculum. Kamali Academy would be an example. That's the online African-centered curriculum. Joanja Kanjufu, he had Set How, self-esteem through culture, at least academic excellence, which I believe was a 26-week curriculum. And it was for elementary, middle school, and high school. And so then you don't even have to explicitly or tacitly discuss these issues while providing an accurate sense of history, culture, education from an accurate sense of perspective. The children will naturally develop those type of understandings of the world, right? So and then you don't have that concern. Or young man would understand, okay, when I'm going to college, there are going to be women throwing themselves at me, but this is just playtime. I'm not going to take them serious,
Okay.
right? And then, for example, a good friend of mine, I'm not going to put him out there. I'm not going to, put in descriptors out there so people can know who he is. But when we was in grad school, I mean, he was white girl crazy. And I'm like, man, like you kind of, he said, look, I'm in college, I'm doing whatever. He says, when I graduate college, start my career, I'm going to marry a black woman. And he's engaged to a black woman right now. But he knew this is simply playtime.
Then also another thing I don't want to guess is to what's that called? The Hidden House Museum in California. I would thought, because I donated to it, I thought he was going to do something like that. But now I'm seeing comedy. I said you have to keep the business going, but there's nothing there for the community like this. Like especially because I've been to California. I remember one time you were on that side of that other country too.
Yeah, I was living extremely expensive in California. Crazy, but yeah.
So I would think that in California, by something like that, he could use that real estate at least every month, host an event for young people just for identity purposes, reinforce. But nothing like that is happening.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, we have to understand he's a grifter. Everything he does is what Tariq Nasheed does, and we're going to bring this back full circle, is he will create a problem. He would drum up a problem on his platform, and then the solution to the problem is to buy products from him. I'll give you an example. And I wrote an article about this on Medium. Make sure you all follow me on Medium if you're not, where he talks about who created hip hop. So this is what creating a problem. The real issue is what controls and owns hip hop, not who created it, right? Surface level issues, right? But the minions that follow him will go for that. Then I'm creating a documentary that you buy where I address the issue of who created hip hop, right? Yeah, right? Well, he states on his website, this is an actual political organization. You go to the website, it's nothing but products for you to. Oh, we don't have any independent black museums. Not true. You have a independent black museum in Detroit. What are you talking about, right? So but what the solution is, give me money to help me make more money. So he's a grifter. It's something to be aware of.
But at least throw something back out to the people. That's all I'm saying with him.
But that's not what he's about. That's not what he's about. Sister Carrie says, I heard that the coaches would encourage them to be with non-black women as well. I don't know that, but what I do know is a lot of the coaches are married to non-black women, particularly white women. So once again, they're almost being socialized to, if you want to be successful, or that the norm is to, like, for example, everybody knows I'm a huge Ohio State University fan. And one of the things that really turns me off is most of the players are with non-black women, or just they complain, white women.
Can I also add something to this? I think if I may make another topic suggestion, because of so-called integration, how should I say this delicately? The NBA, for example, is complaining they're not getting the viewership, they're not getting the engagement they need from NBA maybe 20, 30 years ago. But I also got to say the black community, the black culture was the center of basketball because especially when I was growing up, I was in that center where, like, you go by the basketball court, your girls are watching the guys playing. I mean, it was a culture.
Yeah. I can recall that. Yeah, there will be girls watching us who be like, "Hey, man, shorty here that you like," and you be like, "I got to show what I'm about to be like Iverson today." I remember those days.
Yeah, so there was a culture that was associated with, so that transitioned to the bigger leagues and the Lakers and the Bullets. I mean, because I was in DC but now they changed it to the Wizards. Whole nother discussion. So that was what made basketball at its heights. Now I don't even see that anymore. I don't know if we can talk about the cultural shift of the players, because like baseball, for example, was supported by black people, but they also lost their scene when black people shifted their interest more into basketball and football.
Yeah, but part of the issue was baseball actually purposely sought to create disinvestment in baseball in the urban communities, because baseball is considered America's game, and of course a lot of white people took umbrage with the fact that black people were dominating the sport.
But they took the, like, Jackie Robinson. I don't know. Can we do a topic on that? Because we can go there. I think we need to explore that explore that because I was with my cousin the other day, and they were looking at these new players that were coming. They were foreign. I wasn't even feeling them. I was like, I don't even feel these folks. I'm not even excited.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely. So, but we're gonna bring it back full circle.
Okay, sure.
We're talking about xenophobia. This is something, of course, that is.
But also back to xenophobia. This is good. Why are they now bringing black people from Europe, black Europeans, into a black American sport? That's another issue.
Wait. What do you mean by black American sport?
When I say black American sport, is that it. I would say it started here. It was curated in the black American cities.
What sport are you referring to?
Basketball.
Well, so the NBA is a global league. The NBA went global.
Before it went global, it was here.
Well, but hold on. It went global in the 92 Olympics with the Dream Team. In all sports, your goal is to get the best players. And when you're looking at getting the best players, you don't care what country they come from. That is a reality.
But however, the Europeans, they concern more with their soccer. Where here in America, like for example, I live in the DC area, so Durant, when he got recruited, so the whole DC area was rooting for him. The whole DC area had his back. Mm-hmm. So, but when you bring someone from outside where there's no connection.
Well, I get that, but the issue is from a team standpoint, you're going to just recruit whoever you think the best player is. It doesn't matter where they come from. Now, we may personally feel a particular way, but if you have a chance to draft Giannis Antetokounmpo or Jason Tatum, you're going to draft Giannis. That's just the reality. Because you're trying to win.
But I'll say with Giannis does have some leverage because there is a Nigerian community here that supports him, that were born and raised him. So they're, so he has some level of support here within the diaspora community. So, they can move forward with that because the black diaspora here is growing. So they could bring someone from France or UK to come here and play because of the diaspora community. Mm-hmm. But then homegrown talent, then what happens to our homegrown talent here?
But there's an issue with the homegrown talent. Part of the reason why the homegrown talent isn't what it used to be is because of the AAU circuit, where there's not a focus on actually playing winning basketball. So someone who grew up playing AAU, someone who played football, right? That's part of the issue. Matter of fact, I watched the women's Final Four. In South Carolina had an almost all black team. And UCLA had a all-white team. They had a couple sisters who were biracial, right? Black women were women on the team that were biracial, but they were white passing, you could say. And they got smacked by UCLA. The black girls had no issue with the fact that they got smacked by a bunch of white girls. Now, 25 years ago, we would have played that game like it was Armageddon because of the racial pride issue.
Yeah.
And one of my homeboys, he's an OG from Detroit. He says, well, things have changed. He says back then, even if we had a sense of black pride, even if we were uneducated about black history and culture. He says now students, not only do these young people not tend to have a sense of black pride, they're also extremely uneducated. So to them, we just lost the game. Even though I remember working security at an AAU tournament a couple years ago in Columbus. And there was a couple brothers on the AAU team who were top 100 recruits nationally. And there was like 3 brothers on the team. They didn't take the game serious. They kind of like lollygagging. This all-white team beat them, and they were cheering like they won the Super Bowl. And I told them, I said, that's why you never take anything for granted. Now look at how they acting, right? Because you all were playing around, didn't take the game serious. The next time they played them, I'm not exaggerating, they beat those boys by 70 points.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? But because they aren't being raised in a home with this sense of being curated, the term you use, with this sense of racial pride. Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah. And part of this is due to what? This concept, and I talked about this in my dissertation, the concept of intersectionality. So now we have black youth growing up who they have, their salient identity is in their racial identity. It's I'm queer, I'm female, I'm male, I'm a Christian, I'm Muslim. It's everything but being black. To the point to where blackness is now immaterial.
But I think that was done by design.
Such, but the world does.
Mm-hmm. But I think that was also done by design.
Well, I mean, if the person who coined the term intersectionality was a black woman.
Or was she
encouraged out of black feminist thought?
Mm-hmm. I think black feminist thought could be traced back to white.
I mean, yeah, it does. Cornell Hudson Weems, who coined the term, she wrote the book Africana Womanism, talks about that black feminists are nothing but white feminists in blackface.
As we bring it back to the topic at hand, with someone like Tariq Nasheed and his FBA, he does bring up, black xenophobic vibes people have shared. But again, he does not. He speaks on certain things, but he only speaks on it for a certain level. Then he backtracks. Like you said, the microphone check. He speaks about who created it, but he won't speak about who owns or controls it. And to me, that's the real discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to the reason why we're still like the guy when Jonas Malema addressed the South Africans. We all renting here. You throw them out, the white owner's going to throw you out. So we're still in the same situation. Because he did the microphone check, Black Museum. They built a hip hop museum in New York recently. So, like, when are we going to have these real discussions when we talk about xenophobia? Why is it being caused, and what are we going to do to prevent it as a collective? It can only be done until we become a collective, not an individual here and there. Like, I think your channel should have millions of views. I mean,
yeah, people have said that, and this is something I talked to my cousin about this the other day, and I said, here's the issue, cuz I said, when you're providing, and even Butter Bequaline stated this, Butter Bequaline at times would go on Twitter and have exchanges with people and say, well, go to our show, the Boomba Speaks Bequaline Network, and he says when people saw that I wasn't someone who was simply bloviating and that I knew what I was talking about, they said I'm not going to have anything to do with his platform. And I've noticed this, I used to go on people's platforms all the time. I went on a couple of podcasts, and the people would be discussing issues they knew nothing about and just promoting stereotypes. When I was in California, I used to get my hair cut at a particular barbershop, and the barbershop is simply an echo chamber of misinformation. And I had to come in and say, hey, what are y'all talking about? That's not the case at all. So, I mean, Pink Book Lessons, for example, I think sometimes she makes some good content. She jumped on the FBA train and was making a number of claims that were just adverse to facts. The sister who Crimson Cure, same thing, making a number of claims that were just adverse to facts, right? Dennis Sperling, same thing. So what we tend to find the grip is to promote whatever is popular in the algorithm, and typically is anti-African and sometimes anti-Black. I'll argue one of the reasons why Crimson Cure's platform is so popular is because every day, I think at 11 and at 4 o'clock, she is talking about Black women in a very vile and negative manner. Now, the behaviors are particularly vile and unhealthy, but she doesn't do so in a manner in which she's providing an African-centered solution to the issue.
Mm-hmm. But that's her bread and butter now.
Exactly. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get on my platform and start attacking other people. Most people don't even know I had a disagreement. I hope that I can reconcile with a brother who was a frequent guest on my platform, someone I love, and is near and dear to me. You think I'm going to come on here and talk about it? Absolutely not. Because this isn't a reality TV show, right? So the reality is people build their platforms on drama and attacking people. And you think most platforms, they don't actually talk about real issues. All they do is attack other Black folk.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
This is reality. Yeah, thank you, Sister Carrie. The talking points are the gender wars, anti-Blackness, diaspora wars, or conservatism. Yes, conservatism. Yeah, all of a sudden everyone just became, new grip became being conservative. I'm like, where'd this come from? Right? So And I'm to the point, like, I wish this would grow. I wish it could be something bigger. But I'm like, hey, I'm kind of, like, hey, this is the reality of the situation. Because I don't think most people are really concerned with addressing real issues, real solutions. I had a conversation with a mother here in Dayton. I said, hey, you have a background doing Saturday schools. Hey, you put it together. You have my commitment every Saturday morning. I'll be there to teach. Haven't heard from them.
Mm.
Now, hopefully that will change, because I know she's busy, and when I went by to see her with her husband, she went upstairs and working on some things. But like, I'm about that action, right? But the reality situation is most people aren't, because of the commitment and the sacrifice. Matter of fact, when we created the nonprofit organization CAU, Coalition of African Unity, our charter was, of course, a facsimile of the Charter of Organization of African American Unity, Malcolm X's organization. And there was a brother who would speak as a member of the New Black Panther Party. He would go around and all combat booths, etc. So one of the brothers who was the head of the financial department of our organization ran into the brother out of town and says, listen, this is what we're doing. Boom, 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 boom. He says, when do you all meet? He said, we meet every Sunday at 1 p.m. He says, well, what about NFL football? And the brother who's in the organization said, well, this is far more important than the NFL, don't you think? Far more important, don't you think?
Yeah.
So, like I said, a lot of people, like my man Loda Lux said, they simply they're like Jim Lampley, Larry Merchant. They just talk a good fight. I have a good brother of mine. We grew up. We went to college together here in undergrad. He now lives in Georgia. And he's like, man, I just wish like I could do more. I said, man, you're raising a family. You're instilling African center values in your children. So you're doing a lot for our community. Right, but the real work, there typically isn't any notoriety that comes out of that. Most people just want to talk a good game. Like I said, most people talk a good fight. They act like they're all for that combat, right? Then when they get their contact, they talk about, man, help me find my contacts. You know what I mean? This is reality. This is real. This isn't hyperbole.
But I just really think that I think. For us as Black people, we have to really be pushed to the wall to really get ourselves together, like really be pushed to the wall. Unfortunately, for us to really see that we need to get our stuff together. As long as, in this particular system, they made us comfortable. Actually, we're comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
like I said, if I get an argument with my significant other, if I really want to, I can call the police and they'll just take care of him.
Yeah.
Without knowing the real ramification of what I've really done.
Mm-hmm. Or even caring.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
I'm just. Mm-hmm. So then, but however, I can get angry at the Black man from him dating somebody outside the community.
Yeah. Matter of fact, quick story. We're gonna go back 20 plus years when I was married. I had tried to forget about it, right? Mm-hmm. And my ex-wife, this woman was loco, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. You all don't know who she is, so it's cool. And she was violent. When I say violent, I mean violent. So now you look at me, I'm 225, 230. I work out all the time. By the time I was like $160, literally, I was small. And anytime I disagreed with her, she would look for something to throw at me and hit me with. And I remember going to my mentor at the time, who was a college professor, and I said, "Is this why brothers date outside their race?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, this is why." Straight up. He said, "This is why." This is the same woman who years later now, so then she started, so eventually I called the police on her. Shocked. Are you going to call the police on me? I'll see what type of time you want. After that, and the time she wanted, she'd call the police on me. I get arrested. Of course, I would beat the case, but I didn't have to beat the case. I was exonerated. But so then I'm like, okay, this ain't gonna work. I can't be with you no more. Fine, and I just accuse you of abusing our son.
Oh no!
I still have court documents now showing where this woman falsely accused me of raping my own child when he was 9 years old. I had the paperwork. Matter of fact, this house says I am. You send me an email. You put your email in the chat. I send you the paperwork right now.
Oh no, I wouldn't do that. No,
Right? Because
I believe you. I believe
one
you
of my
because
homeboys, when I was living in Columbus, we worked out together 6 days a week. He even was like, man, if you didn't show me this, I wouldn't have believed you. I would keep the documentation in my car. And this is unbelievable. The mother, yes. And why do people do this? Because they know they can. But then the first thing out the person's mouth, my child ain't got no daddy, his father isn't here, all type of stuff. My son will do something wrong, I get on him about it. Oh, she tell me to my face, I'm gonna call the police on you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. My son do something wrong, she buy my pair of Jordans. Get in trouble at school, buy my pair of Jordans. Guess what happened when he was 15? He got expelled from high school. 16, he was arrested, spent 4 or 5 months in jail for armed robbery.
Whoa.
She took him and moved to Maryland so that I couldn't be around anymore.
Well, so she's on my side of town.
Well, she's not there anymore, but she was. I'm at the Ohio State University. I'm park my car. I'm walking into the office to go to work. I get a call from his principal. I'm like, ma'am, I'm here in Ohio. She's in Maryland. There's nothing I could do. Yeah, this stuff happens every day. So that's when I say you get the home is the issue. This is learned behavior from the parent. These boys are not here just being wayward because boys are wayward. Yeah, and then they say, well, but then they get some other guy to come in and play the role of dad. Yeah, can they have what? Non-biological superiority. You ain't his real daddy. So, matter of fact, any authority the actual non-biological father has is based on the largesse of the mother.
So where is your son now? I'm sure he's of age now.
He'll be 19 in August. He's still with his mother.
Okay.
I told him, I said, you need to come live with me. He says, I don't want to. So I get it. You don't want to deal with accountability and responsibility. I get it. You're accustomed to that because you ain't lived with me since you was 11. This is someone who, this isn't hyperbole. People who know, they're like, your son acted like he was a robot. When she took him, moved away, now he's a high school dropout. Why? Because the family court system, women have carte blanche. Women know that.
But how's your daughter doing, though?
She's cool.
Amen. That's all we can ask.
She's 16. Right? But she got a little attitude on her. Learn from the mother. Right? I'm like, hey.
But my question,
I remember telling my daughter this is when she was 14. I said, listen, I'm going to be real with you. Because she had put her hands on this boy at summer camp. I had to go into the summer camp at the MLK Center in Columbus. I said, I told you before when you were like 9. Was she 9 or 8? She was 8. Was she 8 or 9? Yeah. I said, I told you before about putting your hands on people, particularly boys. I said, because then you're putting my or your brother's life in danger. So when this happened at the summer camp, no, she was 13. I said, okay. She's like, where are we going? I said, don't worry about it. You'll see. We pull up to the boxing gym. So you used to box when you was younger. You used to train and everything. Get in there. Young man said, young man, how old are you? 14. How much you weigh? 105 pounds. Z, how much you weigh? 107. So go ahead, get in the ring. You put your hands on people, go ahead and fight. They go 2 rounds. He get the best of her, of course, drop her, get her out of there. She takes off the gloves. We get in the car and says, so I'm going to ask you a question. Are you a tomboy or are you a young lady? I said, because I'm not going to fight a battle for you when you're the one causing the problem. And I said, one of the reasons this happens with young ladies is because what? They don't have to deal with the consequences of their actions. It's called pit bullying. I could cause a problem, then call a man, and then he'll come deal with it.
Yep.
I said, guess what? I said, I'm the baby in my family. And when I tried that with my brother and sister, they said, fight your own battle. And I learned to keep my mouth shut. Because I said, you can't say you love me, big sis and big brother, but you're putting our lives in danger because you want to act a fool. Yeah. Yeah. And I remember people was like, dang, man, that was a great way to handle that. You didn't put your hands on your daughter. You didn't chew her out, nothing. I said, no, you got to deal with the consequences. Since you like it. Because my daughter's always been tall for her age. She's like, what, 5'8" now, right? She's 5'8". right? Which is tall for a woman. So I said, don't hold on real quick. OG, triple OG, you know what I mean? So this will go ahead, get in that ring, put up. And you can't say you don't know how to fight. You used to train all the time. That's still got the pictures, got the video. Get your behind in there. Handle that. Since you like to put your hands on boys because he's 5 inches smaller than you, deal with somebody your own weight class. But they say pick on somebody your own size.
Yep.
Handle that. Got the same weight, same height. Well, actually, she was taller than the boy. I said, yeah, I told you keep your hands to yourself. Because I'm not about to, your brother and I, we ain't going to be running around acting like crash test dummies because you want to start stuff. No. I mean, these are real issues we have in the community, but this typically isn't stated because what? Most young men are being raised by their mothers due to what? The bias system. They aren't raised in an environment where they're taught how to hold women accountable. They're actually socialized to believe that they're supposed to be deferential. They're supposed to worship women, right? And that being a real man is doing whatever a woman wants. So they don't even know how to lead.
Yeah, I remember Lala Anthony was trying to raise her son that she divorced Anthony, whatever.
Carmelo.
Yeah. Carmelo. I'm like, first of all, why did you divorce him? Like, was Tia married? Like Tia.
I remember there was a situation. This is when Carmelo was with the Denver Nuggets. This is 2009 Western Conference Finals. They lost to the Lakers in 6 games. And it was revealed that during the Western Conference Finals, he was staying in the hotel because she kicked him out the house. I said, that's strange. I said, you can't kick me out of my place. I pay the bills. And I said, it doesn't make any sense to me. But once again, Carmelo was raised by a single mother. So he doesn't know how to be the man in his home. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was with my daughter's mom, this back when my daughter was an infant, and we got an argument, just verbal, nothing crazy. And she was like, you sleeping on the couch tonight. I busted out laughing. She said, man, what's so funny? I said, you watch too much TV. I said,
that's right.
On the couch in a place where I pay the bills. I said, you're out of your. I said, not only am I not sleeping on the couch, you're gonna give it that funky attitude, and it's gonna be loving time in about 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But we see this type of deferential behavior. A lot of Black boys now socialize and behave this way. Michelle Obama has a podcast. Her brother's on a podcast with Will Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett.
Oh gosh.
And she's talking about, well, I exposed the fact that I cheated on Will with our child's friend because I wanted to protect his ego. Of course, that's nonsensical. But Michelle Obama's brother then says, well, yeah, because the women are the ones who really know what's going on and how to lead because we don't know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So once again, we're talking about being deferential, right? This is learned behavior. Mm-hmm. You have to be taught this type of crap. Nobody grows up behaving or being taught acting that way. Right, but this leads to larger social problems because then guess what? Now the woman, where he doesn't know how to lead, I don't respect him because there's a social expectation that he leads and provides. Women can lead or provide, but there's not a social expectation for it. There is a social expectation that men lead and provide, and when they aren't doing it, there's a problem. This is why Chris Rock said, if you lose your job, then there's the countdown. Right before you know it, she's gonna break up with you. Right, but if the woman loses her job, you're like, don't worry about it, baby. We're going to be all right. We're going to support you. I mean, like, right, we're going to help you. Shoot. These are real issues. Some of this, as Mr. K would say, as sisters would say, this is manufactured. But once again, people can't see the forest from the trees. This is only benefiting me. This gives me this pseudo sense of superiority. And so I'm going to rock with it. When I was an undergrad, I wrote an article titled on this particular issue about Black women in the workplace, titled the successful politics, the victorious politics of self-defeat. I said it's self-defeating because now we have 2 incomes in the home. We should be able to do more. Right? But no, you use it as, hey, you're beneath me, and then you become dysfunctional and disrespectful relationship, and now is back to a single income household because you can't be together. A contemporary example of that would be 50-50. All of a sudden, I ain't paying 50-50. You can't go 50-50. Well, if you're by yourself, you're going to pay 100% of the bills. I remember I had a young lady, a student of mine when I was in California, who stated, so I know when I finish my education, start my career, I'm going to be making over 6 figures. So coolio, that's what I'm talking about. Get that money, get the bag, right? Clock that T, as they say, right? She said, but I'm not going to be paying under the bills in the house. I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, do you want your significant other to be an alpha man, an A-type personality, backbone, strong leader, charismatic, etc. Shit, absolutely. I said, do you think a man like that's going to go for a situation in which a woman is making as much money as him when she doesn't contribute to the monthly household expenditure? I don't know. I said, I can tell you he won't. So why? Because I'm that type of man. Because a man like that knows he's being taken advantage of financially.
Yes.
Well, but on TV, I said, no, we're talking about in the real world. I said, now you want to get a sugar daddy who's 50, 60, who wants to trick his money off, and you can have a transactional relationship, fine. But in a real relationship, hey, if you're working, making just as much money as me, but you won't pay any of the bills, you're using me. You're taking advantage of me. I told my son, you want to know how a woman is serious? She spends her own money. She puts skin in the game. If not, she's just along for the ride. And whenever there's any turbulence, I'm getting off right here. That's the reality. That's how you know, as a man, if a woman is serious, she is willing to spend her own money.
Yes.
Am I right or wrong, Sister Michelle?
Yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Anything else? I told my students, that anything else? They said, as soon as they asked me, they said, well, Dr. L, who's the prize in a relationship? I said, did you want me to give you a serious answer or a pop culture answer? And the student's name was EK. He was from Southern California by way of Nigeria. His parents are Nigerian. He's Nigerian, but he was born here in the States. I said, great question. I said, well, the pop culture answer is, I'm the prize, I'm the table. If you ain't got no money, yun, we can't get the job done, yun. Right? I don't cook, I don't clean. Let me tell you how I got this ring, right? The serious answer is, in a healthy relationship, both people's happiness is prioritized. Anything other than that is textbook solipsism. I said, man, I never thought about that. I said, yeah, I know. Yeah. And so most of our people, and this is an issue that we find, of course, is germane to the Western world, their view of life, not just relationships, of life, is based on what they see in popular culture.
Well, because a lot of our children are raised on popular culture because parents are working long hours.
Well, but it's not even that. So let's be real. It's just the people are lazy parents. You know this. It is. Listen, I remember growing up when I was younger. My mother said, we can't watch The Simpsons. We look at our dad, my dad, like, you heard what she said, what you looking at me for? We couldn't watch The Simpsons until I got to high school. Both of my parents worked, right? It's just that people are lazy parents. That's all it is. I'll give you another example. This is way back. This is summer 2015. I had my children doing an African-centered homeschool curriculum. So, over the summer, we want to make sure they stay engaged intellectually, academically, so they don't lose or have a regression in terms of what they learned the previous school year. Mm-hmm. So we're at the rec center. The rec center I grew up at, Northwest Recreation Center, Princeton Park. Let's get a Dayton-View, USA, right? So I said, after 4 years, I'm going to have you all do these 2 worksheets, and then you all can go have fun, da-da-da-da-da-da. Cool. I took a picture of them. It was an iconic picture, at least for me anyway, right? As a dad. So some woman comes up to me. She kind of looked like something. I'm like, what's going on, little mama? You know what I mean? She like, pump your brakes. I'm like, okay, you just can't afford me. But anyway, what you want, right? And she said, well, I want to know, are you a tutor or something like that? And I said, no, I just try to I want my children to stay engaged academically throughout the summer so they don't engage, have a level of regression when they go back to school in September. I said, my parents did the same thing with me growing up. She said, oh, okay. But do you think you could tutor my kids? I said, I want to be like hood rat. I just told you I'm not a tutor. What's supposed to be talking about here, right? I said, whatever. What grades are your children in? She said, 1st and 2nd. So why do your children need a tutor in 1st and 2nd grade? You can work with them whatever they need to work with. Right? Like I said, lazy parents. Lazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They want to contract out care.
Yeah, everybody.
Like there's not like a great aunt or a great. Mm-hmm.
Then raising a child, because when you're raising a child, it's not labor intensive; it's just time intensive.
Yes, because you got to keep an eye. Yeah.
When you're teaching a child how to read, or you know how it is, you could be doing something And then you know what? Can I talk to you about something? I used to, sure. I told my children, I said, whenever you want to talk about something, we got to talk. That's just what it is. Because I told them, I said, I made you, so there's never a time I can tell you no. If you have an issue, a conversation to be an hour and 47 minutes. Your Law and Order went off. You better hope you taped it. And so,
right.
in terms of this, the priority, everything is more important, right? This is just the reality of the situation. So, this is what's going on with parenting in our community now. We find this in, of course, on a macro level in America, where we find this where now, and this is one of the reasons we tend to find, because you don't have 80% of Black children growing up in a household without their father, because you have a large segment of the community in which women don't want to be married. Why? Because they don't want to have what adult male oversight.
They don't, yeah. But then I think that's a topic of issue within itself. Why don't our women want to have adult male oversight?
Well, there's a couple things. One, that's going to be accountability. Two, that's going to be structure. Three, that's going to be consistent discipline. And then, so that accountability isn't just for the children, it's going to be for the mother too. For example,
and the household.
Yes. I saw a picture on Facebook, this is years ago, where a woman, single mother, had 4 kids. She's standing in the middle, 2 children flanked to the left, 2 children flanked to the right. The children are dressed in like formal wear, right? But she's in the family photo wearing lingerie and heels. I'm not making this up. No man worth his salt is going to allow his children to be in a family picture where the mother's wearing lingerie. You see what I'm saying here? So like I say, this isn't a situation where Black men just say, no, these women don't want the father in the home.
Because of the accountability.
Because of the accountability.
The court system will give you the child support, so why?
Yes, Michael Beasley just talked about this, how he grew, his mother lied to him about why his father wasn't in his life. He said, I was always looking for my dad. His dad said, I was always looking for you, but his mother was always trying to replace the father with a bunch of random guys, and he used the word ninjas. And he's on Club Shay Shay crying about the issue. And this man is 35 years old. This is where the dysfunctionalism comes from. When you have a father in the home, he ain't got to be no rocket science, no what's the term that people use? Rocket scientists, right? I don't think that's the actual term, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? But guess what? You're gonna do your homework. You're gonna be well behaved, or else. That's a reality.
But also, I think other communities of culture, even the women understand, it's not about at some level. We got to say this is not just about you per se. It's about generations beyond you.
I know that, but once again, that goes back to the textbook solipsism and the nominal feminism. See, part of nominal feminism is only that matters is the woman and how she feels. This is why, Dr. T.S. Johnson talked about the difference between a matriarchal family household and a gynocentric family dynamic. Matriarchal simply means the woman's the head of the household. She's the head of the family. Gynocentric means the only perspective that matters is that of the woman. The only values, the only people that the only concern for is the female. This is how you have Black boys growing up with their sisters, raised by a woman. The daughter goes to Penn State, the son goes to State Penn. The daughter's been a straight A since elementary school, kindergarten. The son ain't never did his homework. He's out playing basketball all day. And they grow up in the same home. Right?
Right.
My best friend said, you know what? I think the family courts, they're doing this on purpose. And absolutely. Because they know they're going to take that child straight from the family court. And in 10 years, he's going to be what? In prison. And they're going to make money off of him. This is a setup. This is a setup. Because at some point, that boy is going to be bigger than his mother. And when the boy is 6'8", 275 pounds, and she created her own Frankenstein, then she tries to give him to the dad. After telling the child his entire life, your daddy ain't it, you don't need to listen to him.
Yep, all the time.
Over and over and over again. But if you call it out, oh, he's sexist. He's a misogynistic. No, I'm a realist.
Yep. All right, Dr. Lumba, I'm about to head out too. So when is your next show?
What you wanted to be on?
Oh gosh. I don't. I think I need to like email you. I'm not sure. What is your? Are you still teaching in Cal? I mean, I'm not getting not to get too. Are you still having teaching out in California? Or are you out here more on our side now, East
I'm in
Coast side?
Ohio right now.
Okay, so you're Ohio.
Yeah, so I just
So
put I just sent you my email in the private chat.
okay, so let me get that now, and I will just communicate with you from there. I don't
Yeah,
want to ask any questions on here.
right.
Okay, and I'll send you an email and see how we can, and then I'll send you some topics. And then also, how we can grow the channel and just be a support.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And real quick, Mr. K asked this question, and this is a great question, curious question to you both. Do you think that if there was that same old school spirit that was still here today, that dysfunctional behavior you're talking about would diminish? In part, but dysfunctional behavior is prevalent, in my opinion, is because the parents nowadays make space for it. I saw a clip from a Yana Benzant show where she was interviewing a young lady that was kidnapped at birth.
Mm-hmm.
And then raised by the woman who was a criminal, and of course she was dysfunctional. When I smacked this bee and they're talking all this crazy stuff, and I was watching it with my mother real quick, and I said, "See, Mom, the problem here is the father. They allow space for this type of behavior. When I was growing up, there was no space to behave that way at all. Meaning, you breathe hard, you're getting popped in the mouth. Now, does that mean that you should address every situation with violence? No. But what I'm saying is there was no space for me to behave in a manner that was unbecoming ever for any reason. It didn't matter how I felt. It didn't matter if I was wronged, whatever, because I knew that if I behaved this way, I'm making my parents look bad. That's the problem.
But then also people saw examples of couples together. People saw each other loving each other. They saw people resolve things. They didn't see certain things, but now you got internet and everything. So many things that are different from now.
Yeah.
We also have the
times, I mentioned a lot of times we see with young men, black boys, they're extremely irascible, irritable. They go off. They become apoplectic at the drop of a dime, right? Particularly we see this in interactions with the police. This is learned behavior because typically when you grow up with a single mother, her way of solving problems is what? Being belligerent.
Yes.
That's just I got a problem. I'm gonna be belligerent. So then,
but that's not how you solve a problem. But then also, like some of them can't keep a job because I work with young. I do mental health stuff. And some of them are young. They can't keep jobs. They can't sustain a job. They can't. Ration certain things through it.
Yeah.
And now you're looking like emotional on the job. So now it's like the Mexican has taken my job, or the African take my job.
Right.
And
this all stems from what? Because guess what? Children are actors. They act out what they see in the home.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if this is the only thing I'm around, these are the type of behavioral machinations that I'm going to engage in because this is what I've been socialized to view and see as normal. It's an issue. Mm-hmm. But once again, then you got the feminists and the nominal feminists arguing that part of an aspect of toxic masculinity is one's ability to do what? Compose themselves, to control one's emotions, mm-hmm. to be stoic. Right? So this is how nonsensical these ideas really are. Right? But then if you lack self-control, she's gonna say, well, I don't respect you, you can't control yourself. If you do have self-control, they're gonna say, well, see, you're being toxic. I give you an example, then we're gonna shut it down. There was a situation, this is years ago, probably 2015, 2016, my son got in trouble in school. His mother calls me, she's telling me what happened. I said, okay, I appreciate you making me aware of the situation. And I will take some time to consider a solution. And I will talk to my son tomorrow. Oh, you're not upset? See, that's the problem. You don't even really care. Da, 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 da. Now, if I would have went off on the phone, she would have said, see, you lack self-control. That's where he learned it from. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's a catch-22. This is what you're dealing with here. This is why I tell my young men that I mentor, you can't have a care concern about what a woman thinks. Because all they do is they just move the goalpost.
Yep.
You have to be comfortable with who you are. They just move the goalposts. One minute they want you to be extremely emotional. Next minute, I want you to be stoic. Right? I've lived through this. Well, you only pay all the bills because you want to be in control. We should go 50-50 because we're partners. Okay, 2 months later, we're not. Why aren't you paying all the bills? You're not a real man. So you just said I ain't got time for this. And after a while, you realize, you know what? I can't pay any attention to anything she says. This is learned behavior. I learned this through lived experience. Talk to other men, they all gave me the same story.
But I also think we need to have some type of generational counsel for our young men and women in terms of relationships, so they can sustain relationship. But again, this is part of what will be my reparations package. Not to really cut a check. We need institutions.
So, but do you think there should be a check involved?
There should be some payment, yes, because we need money. We're still in we live in a financial economy. I'm not like that absolved from it, but also part of it, the package needs to be strictly for institutions such as a couples institution.
Well, I remember hearing, and this is during the Bush administration, there was actually federal funding for, but there was nationwide where the federal government was providing funds for different companies or organizations to provide like relationship counseling, particularly premarital counseling. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I remember that it doesn't exist anymore because it was part of the Bush administration, but I do remember that, vividly remember that, recall that. Yeah.
But then we have the church, you see, and there's another issue why I have issues with the church, and I understand it. They saw our communities falling, and I'm not saying they didn't intervene per se. Yes, they had the food program, maybe the jobs program, but there was another level of intervention that they needed to intervene in, especially with couples and relationships. Yes, they did a couples meeting, but I think they could have done a little bit more intentional outreach in certain things in terms of parenting.
Well, but the thing for me, the churches are part of the problem because one is not African-centered. It promotes miseducation, right? Seriously, I remember there was a time when I was married before, and my wife was like, well, we should see a counselor, and my cousin's a preacher, and I said, well, he's not a licensed family or relationship therapist or counselor, so why would I talk to him? He doesn't know anything. He started quoting Bible verses. I said, I'm not into that, so that's immaterial here. Well, that's the part. I said, no. He said, that's the problem. I said, no. He said, well, no relationship or marriage can work unless God's the head. I said, I disagree with you, and I'm going to tell you why. The data shows that's not true. I said, let's go over this. Let's go over the data. This is still true to this day. Mm-hmm. What religious group, sister, has the highest divorce rate in this country?
Christians.
Exactly. What religious group has the lowest divorce rate?
I think maybe Islamics.
Atheists.
Wow.
So I said, your claim is adverse to facts. Get the hell out of my house. I said, because now you're insulting my, what? Intelligence. Yeah. Because this isn't an African-centered frame of reference. You're teaching me that I'm supposed to have a relationship or marriage based on another group of people's culture. So now we're engaging in racial deference. In miseducation. Because now Jewish people are the archetype. Their culture is the archetype. Doesn't work for me, guy. I'm pretty smart here. Yeah. When I was on the continent, got married, my wife was like, man, my uncle's a preacher. He's going to get up in the middle of the ceremony, start preaching and everything. And so she, like, when it actually happened, so she looking at me, smiling, squeezing my hand, like, don't spaz out. You know what I'm saying? And so he's like, listen, Lumumba, Dr. Lumumba, I want you to come down here, get on your knees, put your hands up and repeat after me. I said, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that at all. Listen, respectfully, say what you want to say, and then we're going to finish the ceremony. Mm-hmm. But I ain't repeating, I don't know you, and I'm not a child. Mm-hmm. But if you have any problems, you have to start with the Bible. I said, I'm throwing it in the trash. If you give it to me, I'm throwing it in the trash.
I hope you didn't sit there during the ceremony at least.
I told him offline. I said, I'm just letting you know what it is. Listen. No, here's the reality of the situation. This isn't BS. Because and I push back one because I've done shows on the anti-Black nature of Abrahamic religions. Mm-hmm. The second issue is their value. Abrahamic religions don't supersede my values, and the fact that they're acting like it does is a level of what? Theological chauvinism, mm-hmm. which is disrespectful. You see what I'm saying here? It ain't gonna happen. at all. You know what I mean? So my integrity is I'm going to be who I say I am. What? All of the time. Right? I'm African-centered all of the time. I'm not going to acquiesce and not be this when I get around someone who's wearing a collar, a clergy collar. Don't do that. Because that's not what I'm about. I didn't do a show on it, but I guess I will. Appreciate you, Sister Shy. Right?
Yeah. Oh, hi, Shy. Sister Shy. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yes. So I have to be consistent across the board. When I went to Orlando to meet one of the brother Dwayne, and he told people like, "Yup, he's like this all the time on the phone, and he's like this in person. This is really who I am. This is not an act. This is not a show."
Oh, you connected with him? That's nice. That's nice.
In person. I put a picture up on when you go to the community thread. You can see the picture of us. His mother took us to lunch. Yeah. So I'm consistent across the board. Hey, I'm not into that. Right? Into this concept of theological chauvinism, we learned it from the colonizers and the enslavers. Because we know that African religions aren't imperialistic. African religions have no concept of proselytizing.
That's true. Right?
Yeah. African religions, there was always a male and female preeminent deity. In African religions, male and female leadership. In Abrahamic religions, there's a practice of female and an expectation of female subordination. So don't come at me with this crap and talking about these are African religions, because they're not. I know better. I got a PhD for a reason. Doctor. You see what it says? But guess what my license plate says, sister? Dr. L.
Dr. L.
No cap, no lie. You see what I'm saying here? Yeah. So when I was over there, I said, nah, I'm glad you know now. Don't bring that crap around me. We want you to get on your knees and pray. Nope, that's not going to happen. I'm standing right here, say what you want to say, and then we're going to move on. My wife was like, man, they feel like that was disrespectful. I said, no, they disrespected me.
Oh, that's right.
They disrespected me. I'm him, not them. I know better. Yeah. Yeah. So these are some issues, but I always tell people, if you want, actually go to a licensed
counselor,
someone who went to school for that. Right? That is always my position.
Definitely.
Yeah, because their belief is simply because I say I'm believing God, I'm a man of God. You're supposed to listen to me, and I have insight to things I know nothing about. For example, then we're going to cut it short. There's a sister I'm cool with. She's a Black culture center professor. Director at a Big Ten school. We had a conversation. She told me she was looking for a new church home because she took a job in a particular region, and the pastor, former basketball player, didn't make it in the league or make it to the league. So he says, God led me to what? Be a minister, whatever. That's my position, right? If a voice is telling you something, you need to see a psychiatrist and get one of those that make you hurt yourself. You know what I mean? This is my position. Seriously, when people talk about, whenever somebody deletes someone, they always say they heard some voices. There were some voices in their head. You mean she need to see a psychiatrist? Anyway, she tells me she's at Bible study. This Jack-led preacher said that if a person is a victim of sexual abuse, sexual assault, SA, it's because they sinned at some point earlier in their life.
Whoa!
She told me this. So I said, did you leave that church? She said, yes, I did. I said, good. I said, the only person who would say something like that is someone who's a sexual abuser themselves. And when she took umbrage with what the pastor said, yes, Sister Shy, yes. When she took umbrage with what the pastor said, one of the doting female parishioners said, you can't question him. He's a man of God. I said, see what I'm talking about here? These fools are going to show up and get their money no matter what he says. This is why he's out here essaying people. Because only a sexual abuser would make a claim like that. And she says, when I was 8 years old when this happened to me, what could I have done wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. See, that's why I told you to leave that bullshit religion a long, long time ago. Yes. Yes. And we all know what's the second leading cause of child sexual abuse? Individuals affiliated with religious institutions. If you want to keep your child safe, The one thing you need to do is keep them away from a church, mosque, or synagogue. Holla if you hear me.
Yep.
And this isn't hyperbole. This isn't, speculation. The data shows that what I'm saying is true. So my concern is with the holistic development of our community. Holistic. You're selling hope, but then you're raping little kids. Yes, so what do I tell people who say Christianity came from Ethiopia? So a couple things. I always tell people first, number one, that is adverse to facts. If anyone is familiar with the history of Christianity in Ethiopia, we know that what Ethiopians claim, that what Christianity came via, well, we know this from the historical record, that it came via a Greek-speaking Syrian missionary. That is a reality. Ethiopia became a Christian nation in the 4th century, I believe, 4th century, where the king converted and then Ethiopia became a Christian nation. Christianity began in what? The 1st century. So that claim, of course, is adverse to facts, right? But this, once again, are people who are seeking to misrepresent history because they're trying to find a way to come to grips with the fact that they know that they're practicing an alien religion. That's just the reality. Also, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church is far different than what the Western Church, right? The Bible is different, right? The services are different. I know because I've gone. So on several occasions, right? So I was a little bored because I wanted to check it out for myself. Secondly, I've read the Kimber Nagas, right? So it's a lot different. But once again, that's a way for people to try to somehow address the situation that they know that they're practicing an alien religion. Yeah. But that's just no problem, sister. But that's just the reality of the situation. But the form of Christianity that they practice in Ethiopia is far different than what is practiced, of course, here in the Western world, or what Dr. Ali Missouri would call European Christianity. And that form of Christianity, or Ethiopian Orthodox Church, is actually rejected by the Western or European canon of Christianity. So. What are my thoughts on African spirituality? Actually, I have a little bit more time. So I actually was in the process last year of creating an actual, we have a playlist where we have a series where we focus on, of course, African religion and spirituality to demystify and deconstruct many of the negative things we've been taught about our religious and spiritual heritage. But of course, I'm an atheist, so I don't practice any. But if I were to practice, it would be in traditional African religion. It'd probably be voodoo, you know what I mean? Sapase, shout out to Haiti, right? We do know that voodoo was the state religion in Dahomey, and it's still rather prevalent in Togo and Benin, right? But I think there are some benefits, but just because I'm an atheist, I'm just not into spookism of any kind. But are there some benefits? Absolutely. But like I said, if I were to practice, I would have to practice this because it's culturally congruent, right? And that's what's most important to me. Most important to me. So, any final questions before we call it a evening?
It's been a good show. Thank you so much. So yeah. You, Ohio, you're still East Coast time, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're East Coast. Okay.
Yes, and listen, we need more sisters involved.
I'll send you an email. I didn't want to say too much on the live, so okay. I'll send you an email.
I mean, we need that because it becomes male dominated. Then the presumption is that they don't want sisters there. Like that ain't the case at all. We need. I mean, and I'm actually writing a book. Intellectually dense book is titled "Pan-Africanism: A Critical Reintroduction from the Middle Passage to Marcus Garvey." My book seeks to provide a new dimension to the historiography of Pan-Africanism, in which I advert that the origins of Pan-Africanism did not take place when Africans disembarked in the New World, but during the crucible of the Middle Passage, where we saw the creation of a Black diaspora identity, and where African people, men and women, worked together, overcame barriers to what foment shipboard insurrections.
Yeah, but also if you can address the current latest questions on diaspora, Pan-Africanism.
I do. I'd address all of that in the introduction.
Oh, okay, yeah, because it's coming under fire, big time.
Yes, and also in my book we focus on the development of the ideology up until Marcus Garvey, and we highlight charismatic figures, particularly women who are typically omitted from the narrative of Pan-Africanism. So we're talking about one Ella D. Barrier, right? We're talking about one Miss Alice Kinloch, right? So we're really going in and focusing on sisters in the struggle as well, when we're highlighting those charismatic figures that have helped promote the ideology and movement throughout since its inception.
Good. All right. Yes. So definitely follow up with the email. Thank you for having this live, so I was able to join, catch this one, and hopefully you have some more. Yes,
absolutely. So next time, y'all know what to do, family. Peace. It says that my email still the same. Yes, yes, it is. Now I'll put it right here in the chat very quickly for you. gmail.com. Yes, so my email is still the same. It is, Bakari Lumumba, inc@gmail.com. All right, thank you. Before you go, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you for supporting the channel of a member here at Lumumba Speaks. We always bet on Black. Peace.